I think we are live now. So, what's up, folks? Welcome to the Real Talk Tap Talks. This is episode 16, and my name is Nico Rubio of Shuffle Life Productions. Today, we have a very special guest, someone that is a real close friend of mine, and I admire her talents as well. So, we have somebody that you've seen everywhere from Shuffle Along on Broadway to her own productions and things that she's currently up to now. There are so many credits and things that I could share, but an amazing human being and tap dancer, we have Miss Lisa Latouche.
Yeah, what's
Welcome.
up? Thank you,
What's
Nico.
yeah, how you doing today?
I'm great. I've been looking forward to hanging out with you, man.
Yeah.
Seeing what TTT we get
what,
into.
what triple T to get into? Yes. Yeah, yeah, y'all. So thank you for those who are tuning in right now, and thank you for your patience. I'm still new to as much technology as I'm, handling at the moment, and we had a false start on my end. But thank you all for tuning in now and finding us somehow. I done restarted it, but yeah. So for those who may not know you, I kind of start most of these podcasts the same way with folks, just starting from your origin, and then we go from there. So it'd be dope to, we're going to talk about Chicago, your time in Chicago,
Yeah.
but it would be fresh for you to take us through, a little of your upbringing, and then into, Mad Rhythms Canada and how that
Yeah.
brought you here.
Yo, yeah. How the heck did I end up in Chicago?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm so grateful, man. I'm so grateful because there's something special about like talking with family and like sharing the story with family. So um, I just want to get that out of the way. So as family, as I talk, and if I get off the map, bring me back, please.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
So speaking of maps, okay, I am currently in Calgary. This is my hometown, and a lot of people do know that I'm from Calgary, but not many know that I was born in Edmonton. So Edmonton is a city about 3 hours north of Calgary in the province of Alberta in the country of Canada. And yeah, I was born in Edmonton and we moved to Calgary as a family when I was like 6. And um, my mom took tap lessons when she was a kid.
Mm,
So there was like, I remember I have vague memories of when I was in Edmonton going into, those like ballet tap combo classes that you throw your kids in the suburbs.
for sure.
And all my mom reminds me of, the only memories I have of that, I think I was 5, was putting tap shoes on and like hating that it took so long for the other kids to get their tap shoes on. And then us only having like 5 minutes to shuffle. And so anyway, we moved to Calgary. My parents were like just amazing, diligent parents that tried putting me in different extracurricular activities. And then my mom, coming back to my mom and her dancing, I just remember her like showing off a little time step or something simple, a little drawback or something in the kitchen. And I always got a kick out of it. So they tried it. They tried it again at 8 years old. They were like, "Well, why don't we just put you in tap class instead of the ballet tap class?"
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is I fell in love with it, yes, but the first time I learned how to shuffle ball change was holding onto a ballet bar. What is that? What is
I had a
that?
similar experience on some
Whoa!
Al Gilbert vibes.
Me
So,
too. Yes. Thank you. It's so funny. I think, I have some of these ITA magazines here, and I'd found, I'm not going to like go off tangent, but I found something about Al Gilbert in here, and I was like, so
Mhm.
crazy. But anyway, a foundation is a foundation. So
Yeah.
I fell in love and I went to a dancing school. The first dancing school that I went to here in Calgary was called Alan Kazubo's, and he's still alive. And he was the teacher of a lot of my teachers and some of my mentors here in Calgary. And at the time, I'm transparent. I was born in 1981.
Mm.
So I was, going there, and that would have been 89. Around that time, his schools were starting to close, like, he's getting older or whatnot. And we didn't do well in competition. My parents were like, why don't we bring you to that school? So I moved over to another dancing school that most folks know here in Calgary is called Premier Dance Academy. And that was like my home studio until I graduated, etc. And yeah, so at Premier, I'm telling this all for a reason, but at Premier Dance is when I continued with Al Gilbert for a little bit and took my exams. I hated the exams. I would sweat during the exams. I had to memorize tap terminology. Yes, we had to count the notes. I had to remember these routines, get the arms in the right spot, all that stuff. And I didn't know. I don't know. It's funny because I think I did 2 exams and I think I got 100 on both of them, but I didn't know that I was doing a great job. You know what I mean? I just was listening to my teacher, and then they're like, oh, you were doing really well at tap dancing. And then it just became like I had to start picking up these other skills in order to be on the competition teams. This is the late 80s, early 90s. I didn't have an email address. My parents there's no internet. So the only thing that there was what you could do. The only way to perform aside from your recital was to do a couple competitions. I think there's only 2 in my city that even existed at the time. So yeah, I started when I was 12, did my first tap solo. I can't believe I'm talking about all this, but
it's a setup.
It is a setup. But I say all this to say that to me back then, and I'm grateful that there wasn't the competition machine happening. It was like I got to take a private lesson with my dance teacher, and because most of the time, yes, I was shuffling at the bar, shuffle, ball change, turn. And there was more ballet classes available than tap class. If I signed up to have a tap solo, that was extra class for me. Do you know what I mean? So I remember just loving that I had private time with my teacher. Now, I say all this to say that not really tap dance related at the time. One of my teachers at the school was Joanne at the time Irving, and her name is now Joanne Baker. And the reason why it's like a full circle because I've reconnected with her, and she's come on some of my Zooms lately, and we've talked quite a bit. But I'm so grateful for her because she was a dance company member of Decidedly Jazz Dance Works, which is a big company here in Calgary where the founders rooted it in jazz music and the origins as best as they could and can, and as much as integrity is, they're doing the thing with respect to jazz music. And in the 90s, they did so much so that they brought Frankie Manning, and they also brought Buster Brown and Heather Cornell. And I say this is because of one of my dancing school teachers that was a professional dancer, and there was nothing else that I could check out. It was I was really lucky that I knew to go and watch my teacher dance. And so we'd go to these concerts, and I have this memory of sitting in the balcony in the second row. I can tell you what seat. I have a full memory, and I think I was about 13. And I saw this older black man tell a hilarious joke, and he can dance amazing. And then cut to, that was Buster Brown. And I just remember going that is dope,
Yeah.
And my teacher at the time, her name was Peggy, like my tap teacher at the time, her name was Peggy. She started taking classes with Heather Cornell because Heather was working with the company and she had brought Buster and she took a couple lessons with Buster. And then all of a sudden, syllabus was gone. She's like, we're doing open tap classes and I'm just going to share some of these phrases that I learned. Later, did I even understand that she was sharing some Eddie Brown stuff? I still remember some of those rhythms that she would share in class. Heather Cornell came through at one point and we improvised and I was frightened in the corner, and, so I wasn't exposed, but I was a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then it just became that here I am in Calgary, this girl from a regular dancing school that I took all the styles. I loved to dance. I wasn't great in ballet. I wasn't super flexible. I sucked on point shoes. They took me off of that in 6 months and said, that's okay, honey. And I was devastated because everybody else,
Right.
was so great. And it seemed like, but I love tap like no other. And, so in honor of that and great friends, great teachers, anytime anything showed up on television, everyone was just like, Lisa, you got to check this out. So, and my parents would take me to Blockbusters and rent those movies.
Wow.
And we rented the movie tab. We rented White Nights. We rented Singing in the Rain. I remember like my dance teacher and I with Tasha Lawson's brother, fun fact, Matt Lawson, and I were partners, and we would study Moses Supposes. So this is all I had access to, right?
Yeah.
And we like ripped that from the VHS tape, you know?
Right.
So that was kind of my shed. And it's like, it's interesting because lately I've been really thinking about this. All of that was fine and great and groovy, but I'm telling you, it wasn't until one of my friends was like, here, we recorded this PBS special that has tap dance on it. And we know that at that time I had seen a little bit of Savion Glover on award shows in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So everyone knew that I was like, this is cool. He's an icon for me already. But I got this VHS tape with Savion and Knots, NYOTS, Not Your Ordinary Help Me Tappers.
Yeah.
TTT. But, right, exactly. But, they performed for Bill Clinton, and I swear, I loved the thing and never thought, even for a second, that I had, like, I'm going to do this until I saw Ayodele. And at the time, Jason Brett was on there, Abron, Omar Edwards, and Ayodele. And they announced, no disrespect, but we have our First Lady and On Walks Io, and they kill this thing that's like all a cappella, and I hear music. I hadn't really heard the dance as a percussive, like melodic instrument. And then I see a Black woman there. I was like, oh, it's over. It's over. Then so that was it. Like that was Gregory Hines and Sammy Davis and all that stuff was like obviously super dope, but it didn't hit me until I saw that. And then that's all I studied for years. Just I would come home, put that VHS tape, wear it out, try to get a few bars, And then I'm getting to Chicago. I swear I'm getting to Chicago.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah, but the synergy was, okay, so then I became the girl that would win some awards at dance competition with her tap solos. Everybody was winning with their ballet or their modern or their, contemporary wasn't happening, their jazz solos or whatever. But everyone knew that I loved tap dance, and I did everything. I did teach jazz. I did teach street jazz, but what I'm saying is it's the synergy. So at that time, Sean Cheeseman, who he was a choreographer. He still is a commercial dance choreographer. That's a weird word, but at the time he had just come back to Calgary. So he's from Calgary as well. And his parents actually had a home in the same neighborhood as my parents. His parents come from Trinidad. My dad comes from Trinidad. So, and Sean went to Alan Kazubo, which is where one of my dance school teachers went. So when Sean came back into town, he taught right at my home studio. And right. Sean came back into town from LA after touring with Michael. He was in the Bad music video. He choreographed Scream with Michael and Janet Jackson. Yeah. He toured with Janet. He was in Rhythm Nation. So he was in LA deep and in the scene deep. And so now here I am in the late 90s. At that time, Michael Jackson is the icon of icons, right? So, and Janet, to know that like I could take a class with somebody who worked with him or choreographed for him, I was like front row. And then he's Trini, and then he's in my neighborhood, and his parents and my parents were like, yo, it was like, and I'm so blessed that he really saw talent in me. He can tap dance a little bit, but he was full on street jazz. Yeah. So he would come and teach us jazz classes, and he taught. Still to this day, I've popped in a few classes and, pre-pandemic and conventions and stuff and watched his classes. It's always some dope African house music, some dope whatever, like dope music. Yeah. And he teaches, he never counts, and that's how he taught. And I picked that up, and that's how I put rhythm in my body through him. So he happens to be in Calgary, and he was back here for a few years at a time where I'm now graduating high school. I was going to college in engineering. What else was I going to do? There wasn't really a big dance program here really yet. And I was like a science nerd in school, so that is also a thing. But here's Sean, and Sean is doing these industrials in town, and he's hiring me, and he gave me my first job where I got paid to go into rehearsal, and I was like, what? This is a thing? Like, I would pay to be here. What are you talking about? Right. We were dancing on scaffolding. At the time, there was like pyrotechnics. We would come through fire, doing this dope, like we had knee pads sliding on our knees. There were B-boys on the bill. Then he had Greg Farkas. Do you remember that name?
Of course.
Yes, you do remember. Yeah, we were on this one gig together, and he had us. He's like, "Can you guys do this tap section?" He's like, "I'll let you guys design it or whatever, but I want you to tap up on the scaffolding, etc." And now, during that gig, we had to go and do the overdubs. Because we were performing in this it was like a World Petroleum Congress. Like, oil and gas was a huge industry here in Alberta. So it sounds like Texas as ever. But that was the gig. We got this big gig, and we had to record these overdubs for our tap sounds. And it was the first time me being in a recording studio, and I'm working with one of Michael Jackson's choreographer. Like, I'm feeling like I'm flexing. Yeah. And we're sitting in the sound booth, and he's just like, encouraging me. He's like, "You're doing great." Like, I feel he's always said from the gate, "I think New York for you. I really think New York for you." He's like, because he felt like I could do everything. He said, "I think you could do like music videos and stuff, and you can, and then New York has tap, like you can then be all of you there."
Right.
And then I said, "Okay, well, I'm in school." And then he gave me that talk, and real talk, tap talks, like, I'm just going to say what it is. But he was just like, "Why are you in school right now?" And I was like, "Well, I want to have a plan B." And I was like, he's just like, "What's your plan A?" I'm like, "Dance, for sure." He's like, "Well, what if you went for plan A?" And I was
Mm.
like, oh man. So I came home crying and I said, I'm going to take a break from
Yeah.
school. I want to go to New York, da 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 da, you know, and that was a wrap. So here I am thinking I want to go to New York. I filed that away. And at around that time too, this is like 2000, the
Yeah.
tap festivals are starting to bubble up a little bit. And there was a tap festival in Vancouver. The first tap festival I ever went to was actually in Vancouver in 2000.
Mm.
And Diane Walker was there. And that's the first time, again, I see a Black woman, an elder. Like, she sounded like a piano. I saw her perform live. All the classes were great, but when I saw her dance, I was like, these are the people I want to be around. This is
Right.
like, that's it. I have never like felt like seen myself, do you know, or
Mm.
imagine that I could be that if I, you know, pursued this. So that opened my eyes. And then 2001 was the very first Tap City. So I waited tables and taught a bunch of classes. I had quit school and I went to Tap City. I saved my money. And the first Tap City was in 2001, was at the old Ailey Studios.
Mm.
And my first class was with Buster Brown at the old Ailey Studios. And the second class was with Gregory Hines. And then it was like 2 weeks of residencies with Jason Samuel Smith, Max Pollock. I was taking Ted Levy, and in the middle of Ted's class, Savion would walk in, and you know I'd want to fall out. I'm like,
Right.
what is happening? Like it just, I was shot out of a cannon because I like New York. New York is either great to you or it's awful. And it was
Right.
so good to me on my first trip. It felt like everything, I felt like I was in the middle of a movie set at all times. You know, there were these great street tap jams and scaffolding in the middle of Tribeca. Then Swing 46 was happening on the side. Savion Glover was teaching at Broadway Dance Center. So like Tap City was just one thing that I was signed up for, but you know, I was like not sleeping and I was everywhere and
Right.
making friends from all over the world, and people are embracing me, and I'm going to all the panel discussions, and Ernie Smith was there showing all his footage. You know,
Wow.
the ITA, all the reps from the ITA were there, and they were like, we don't have anyone in Western Canada. Do you want to be a rep? You know, and so I just was like land blasted with information, right? Okay, I still is not talking about Chicago, but I was like massive feather in my cap about New York, right? Like I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Come back home. My dad gets sick. I knew I needed to be home for a little bit. My family was going through some stuff. And Sean Cheeseman is still here. And Sean, there's no dance conventions, right? And Sean's just like, well, shoot, I'm going to start one. And he's going back and forth to, this is a trip. He's going back and forth to Germany, teaching at a school in Stuttgart called the New York City Dance School. Who else is teaching classes there? Brill, Trey, and George. In like Germany, you know what I mean? And Sean happened to be there at the same time, right? So because Brill and Trey were touring with Riverdance at the time. So I come home and Sean's home and he's like, Lisa, have you ever heard of Mad Rhythms? I was like, no. And he's just like, you got it. Like they took me to this jam. I saw them, you know, he just gave me the tea. Really, and he's just like, these folks are doing the thing. So he's like, I'm going to bring them to my summer camp. And so here I am, like trying to think about my life in New York. And then Sean Cheeseman brings Brill Barrett, and his classes are dope as ever. I still remember he called me and two other Black women the Rhythm Queens. Because you know Brill. He's just like, where y'all at? I want to give you this. And I still remember him improvising to the first 4 songs off of the Who Is Jill Scott album. And I'd never heard anybody like tap dance to music I really love. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
it. Like, that's it. So we caught up on this during his summit last year in 2020. We caught up on Zoom and
Yeah.
talked about this memory, about the table that we sat at downtown where we went for lunch or something. And he told, I was like, I want to be in Mad Rhythms. And he kept talking about Jimani and Trey, and I hadn't met them yet. But I couldn't leave home yet. Family was in, I wasn't, and I hadn't been thinking about Chicago. I didn't even, whatever. But he's just like, well, I've always wanted to think of myself as a franchise. So he's like, why don't we do Mad Rhythms Canada? And I was like, what? And then I didn't take that lightly. I was like, of course I want to do that. And at the time I was teaching, the advanced tap classes all over the city. I was going around different studios. So I had some students that were really hungry. One of them, a student at the time, now like my brother, but one of them was Danny Nielsen, and this other cat, Eric Wagner, my sister, Ashley Steele, Courtney Woods, who's still tap dancing, Lucas McFarlane, a bunch of these folks here in Canada. So I said, I think I charged them like $50 a month. I got somebody, and I only charged them so I could like fly Brill in.
Right,
you know
right.
what I mean? Yeah. Like I got studio, I'm just giving you all the tea. I got studio sponsored, and Brill would come in. He taught us Oye Como Va. And we would circle up and we'd just start getting local gigs around here and et cetera, et cetera. So that's the beginning of Mad Rhythms Canada. I still I'd heard your name, but I didn't know who you were. And he was starting to tell me about the crew. And then the following year is when Brill was like, let's bring Trey and Jimani. And Sean Cheeseman also brought Trey for his camp, because he had met Trey, and he kept telling me too, he's like, you got to meet Trey.
Yeah.
So I met Trey the following year and fell in love. Just put all the TTT.
Yeah.
It's just real. So, and that was the summer when we brought the crew to St. Louis, and we met all of y'all.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think that was 04. 04. Okay, let me say this. 04 was when I think it was only myself and Danny that came. And 05 was when more of the crew came. It must have been 04 that because do you remember when we all performed Oye Como Va together? At St. Louis in the student showcase?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it. 04 sounds like it could have definitely been right, because I remember being mad young and a little immature about it too.
well, because this is the thing is, who were we, right? But Brill had been like, he's been really supportive and really like, I think you'd have to speak to him, right? But I think he was excited to have this sister company, and of course we had mad work to do. We weren't shuffling like y'all, but I can't imagine. Here we come, and there's like the bid of who gets the opening solos, right? Yeah. So, like, let me pass the mic to you, because what was that like?
Yeah, well, so this podcast is luckily has people who tune in who are not just tap dancers. So I feel like if you're tuning in, you kind of know a bit about Mad Rhythms. And as Lisa shared, there was, a branch that was started by by her in Canada. And so this was the first time that like that happened. I think, well, I guess there's Mad Rhythms Vegas or something, but like, but it was the first time that happened. And I remember, I can't speak for anybody else. I feel like that's how I remember it, is me and a few people, but I could be wrong. At least I was like kind of skeptical about like, what is this going to be in the first place?
I think Trey was too, and Jimani. I remember.
Yeah, because just understandably for anybody trying something new when like you're somewhat established, but we were still establishing ourselves.
Sure.
And for me personally, I was still trying to find a place in getting one of those solos in the original thing.
Yeah.
so
Right.
so basically, once we linked up, like I remember Brill mentioning all of this stuff happening, and it wasn't all like just question mark. It was like, well, this seems cool, like
Hmm.
Canada. I don't know. At that point I hadn't traveled anywhere, and even though it's just north of us, it was like, wow, like another country. It's not just another state. Like we have
Yeah.
something happening in another state. And then once we met, I was still like maybe figuring it out, like half in, half out. But then this piece that Lisa's talking about, Oye Como Va, I already was always kind of vocal about, like, how do I not have a solo in this piece? I'm the one, and when my sister was in the company, we're the two, or I'm the one, we're the only Latin folk in this piece, and we're not,
Right. That part, though. Yeah.
so I actually didn't end up liking Danny, and we've talked about this before. It's funny initially because Brill's like, we're in the studio figuring it out for rehearsal, and Brill's like, all right, we're gonna have so and so go first, then Lisa gonna pop in, then so and so, and then Danny, and I'm just on the side like, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Of course.
they're
I mean,
getting
of
the solo in
course.
this piece before I do. I see how it is. I'm gonna just, but it was just like one of those, that's like a lot of people's relationships in music and entertainment and life. Like,
Oh
you might
yeah.
meet somebody who you become really close with, but your initial something, so that's just how I felt in that moment. But n- it must have been still that same year that I was like, I'm being immature. I don't know if I said that to myself, but I was just like checking myself, like, all right, you're tripping. Like, it was fun once we did the piece and like hanging with folks and getting to know, like, the different customs and the different
Oh
ways.
yeah. Oh
You all
yeah.
saying a and
Yes.
things like that. I
We
was
were
just
like
like
Canadian as ever.
super, yeah. So it was,
I remember, like, I'm about to blast. I don't care. I hope Danny's listening. I just remember him saying to me, he's like, or maybe I don't know, but J-Bo being like, y'all hoop in Canada? And Danny going, excuse me?
yeah,
Which I would have done, like, this is,
it had to be a
no
mutual
social
culture.
media, no, like, you
Exactly.
don't understand. And even like now, me looking back on my like childhood, early adulthood in Canada, we had no exposure to Black history, culture,
Right.
aside from like my family. It was like, so of course
Yeah.
it was like, it took a minute. Like, there was
Yeah.
like totally different customs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and just like Lisa's saying, for anyone, any young folks who are like, I don't know, just so used to this now, but if you hear about somebody, you type their name in Instagram or
Right.
Facebook and you see who they are, you could like figure out a decent little bit about their life before you even meet them. So this was like us just really getting to know each other. And I can only imagine like meeting us, especially for how we were dressing back then, and like just the whole, it had to be like a thing.
My crazy sideways sandiness,
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Wearing boots and things.
I was just trying to find myself.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, I remember Jamani making jokes because I was wearing Birkenstocks. It's like, this is wild.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because what else I remember? Because Brill would stay with us. I still, obviously I was young, so living with my family, and yeah, I remember like that VCR downstairs until 4 or 5 a.m. And he brought, I said I have it back here, but he brought the Doctors of Dance. This was just after that because I think I met Brill '03 and Doctors of Dance was '02.
Mm,
2002, and they went.
yeah.
I know Brill was mentored a lot by the late Robert Reed, but I remember seeing that there's a small clip on that tape of him and Trey and Jamadi dancing, and I just remember like I'd never seen that. Do you know, like I hadn't seen a crew, even though it was just the three of them, just trading like in raw fashion, you know? So I remember when he would come and I first met him, and he would show me stuff like that. Like that's all we had was like a crusty VHS to be like, check out Trey and Jamani. You know, like you couldn't, to your point, you couldn't look up somebody on YouTube or someone's Instagram page and watch someone shed or like see a recent clip. Like now I feel like we know so many tap dancers before meeting them. You
Right.
know, then I just had this like idea of who you all really were and just a level of chops that I had no idea was possible, you know. I
Right.
didn't have I you know. So yeah, yeah. And I do. It's the fall that following year. Now '04 was when Brill, Trey, and Jamani came, and we did one of those like 4-hour tap concerts at a high school. I didn't care,
Right.
and then we went to St. Louis, and so it was '04 because then after that was the summer where everyone I was hearing "Love Me or Leave Me" everywhere, and I had it on my Discman, and and yeah, I remember St. Louis, you know, St. Louis. I'd
Mhm.
met George. There was not enough room in. I flew to St. Louis. That was the first one. Then it was Rhythm World in Evanston, and there wasn't enough room in Brill's truck and Trey's truck, so I got thrown in the whip with Gmo. It was the first time me meeting George, and he got lost, and he had to find his phone died, so he had to find a payphone and call Brill. But we clicked, so it was great. You know, great way to meet George Patterson. And then we did Rhythm World, and this is me just taking classes, of course. And then flew to LA
Mhm.
and did the LA Tap Fest because that was the trilogy. And then later that summer was the Vancouver Tap Festival again, and I think I was working on a project there too. And Jason was there, and Diane was there. She was there every year. And yeah, super inspired. And then when all that was done, you have your like the Tap Fest is over blues, and you know you try to remember every bar that you can. And then I started working on Love Me or Leave Me just to challenge myself. And I had the crew, and we started renting the studio space here. And then you know it was crusty. But we got it up, and then that's when Brill was just like, "Well, do you want to put this on the crew in Chicago?" I was like, "What? Yes,
Yeah.
that's like mad honor." I couldn't even like really properly do the whole piece at that time, but I like I knew, you know, I was weird like that. I like choreographed more advanced than my ability at that time.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I remember putting it on y'all, and we did it at um, the October joints. What was that? That was before Summit Life. That was like, what were those called? Those concerts called in Chicago every
That's a
summer.
good question. Yeah, before it was the festival, it was an event that was like the main show, and then there would sometimes be classes. So I can't remember if there was a name for that before it was the
Yeah.
summit. But yeah, I was gonna ask, and so you answered because I remember learning that piece, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't remember what the event was, if it was that or something else. Like
Yeah.
we used to rehearse in Chicago on the South Side at the South Shore Cultural Center, and like on the south end at the end of Lakeshore Drive, and
Mm-hmm.
we ended up with some space in the basement, which was better than it sounds, I guess. But but we started like upstairs, like not long after you walk into this big building, and I remember it was in the upstairs room, that front room. I remember learning that and just being like, "Damn, this is like some heat," you know.
I
I remember
really appreciated that you all thought so because I was just like, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know, me just being honest, like still figuring ish out each time. You know, that was like, okay, well, this is dope. You know, I feel like I was trying to be open minded. You know, instead of not being, I don't know, not being weird about it, but just trying to question like what is this? What's
What the
happening?
hell is going on? I know.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you mentioned before that like seeing Jimani do a solo to it was some inspiration,
Yeah.
and then
That's
Untitled
right.
gave you, you know, some footage with a CD kind of vibe, and it was on there
Yes.
too.
It
Yeah.
was like that summer it played all the time. I heard it. I had a CD. I think I had that like Finest Hour, Nina Simone Finest Hour. I think I just like, I had it, and then I remember I was like listening to it, and then the following, it was like within days of me like starting to listen to it a lot, Jimani happened. It was like not, it was just coincidence. Jimani happened to use that during a student showcase, ripped it, of course. And then it just kept popping up. And then Diane would give some CDs of like, this is music everybody should be listening to. And it was on there. I remember, so then I was like, what? Another sign. And then Jason in Vancouver used Diane's CD and used that in his advanced class. And there's like that wing step at the end is Jason's. And I tell him that all the time. I'm like, I needed to work on that. And he was like, it's okay if I put it in my thing, I always shout him out. But yeah, it was like around. And so then I didn't think, it's what? I don't even know now, like 16 years since, something like that.
I'm zoning because you talking about zigga digga 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 digga
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
I don't know if I knew that or maybe I just forgot that, but that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
If y'all are interested in
yeah.
oh, word.
Yeah.
If y'all are curious, it's got to be on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, look up
Us doing it is the one that everybody watches when we did it in China.
Crazy. Yes,
That first like gig of us on the road as Just Listen,
crazy.
And Jimani was in there.
That was really dope. So we can just mention this for a minute, and then we'll go back.
Yeah.
But
I think we're there now anyway.
You said what?
Yeah, I think we're almost there now anyway.
Yeah.
Timeline-wise, go ahead. Yeah.
And this is a Shuffle Life but Nico Rubio production, so it's all good wherever we go. We're not following strict rules. We're just vibing. I'm really just interviewing all my friends. It's not like super top button. I mean, I do have my top button, but but it's yeah. But yeah, we did this gig in China, in Beijing, and it was my first international gig. And so this company that after we left Mad Rhythms, we're skipping ahead, but Trey started Just Listen, this company that me and Lisa were a part of. And we performed as ourselves. We performed with other people. We, did a mix and match of things. But we had Jimani Taylor join us for Love Me or Leave Me, this piece that we're talking about. And so we had to change up the spacing a little bit from what it normally is, from what Jimani remembered the piece to be, into how we adapted, for 4 people and then for 5 when he joined us. And I still love that footage because we went from like a line to a diagonal at one point.
Yes.
Jimani missed it, so we're all over here, and he catches it at the last second. And
he made
just,
it.
Did some freestyle over and came in line in time for the cannon. And I don't know. I look up to all my peers, in different ways in the dance, and seeing the way that he did that and made it in time, I was like, yo, we couldn't have choreographed that. Like,
right.
I guess we could, you could, of course, but like just the way that it happened was dope. So that's dope that's what people are checking, is that footage. So go and see what we're talking.
Well, and that like as the evolution of Love Me or Leave Me, completely unintended. Like I can't tell you the fact that people are like, this is now like a classic routine. I'm like, that's wild to me, but okay. But that concert though kind of is what put it on the map, because that was when Chicago Human Rhythm Project brought like 60 youth, or remember it was like over 60 dancers that they brought to Beijing. What the deuce, like?
Yeah.
But So there was a keen sense of rhythm, insight. These are all youth ensembles. So keen sense of rhythm is from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Insight, from North Carolina. Um, oh my gosh, I always forget the name, but the crew from San Antonio with Barbara Phillips.
Right.
They were there, and a few others. But anyway, they would be in the wings, and I didn't know until later in life that they were like, that was the piece that they all wanted to learn. And I say that to say, because I've like have this real close connection to San Antonio for like 10 years. I'd be there twice a year working with a performing arts high school and the Third Coast Rhythm Project via Barbara Phillips, and she invited me to teach this piece. But it was because they were there with us in China that they're like, can we ask Lisa to come and da-da-da-da. And so that's when people were starting to request me to teach this. And I was like, what? I didn't even know that was going to be a thing. And it was really, that's kind of what started it.
Yeah. I mean,
it kind of snowballed.
Yeah, I think that's dope how that's happened with certain people's pieces, because sometimes something happens and it just stays in that time. But the fact that, people know it now, if we ever, when the world opens up, like for real, but if we ever end up somewhere where cats could like do it, it's like, if there's not something new, that could be a classic piece that's thrown in rotation. And just to, speak to having you here now, it's March 2021. In case folks are tuning in or listening in another time, and this is Women's History Month. And I know that this, might make you feel, funny, but this is women's history that we're talking about right now. Like, you have made history, and this is going to make us both sound old to be calling all this history, but we're still young in the game and in life, but that the fact that you put that together and it's touched as many people as it has now, is super fresh. So
I don't take it lightly. Yeah. I did not, full disclosure, did not hustle for that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's just every time someone requests it, I'm very like, wow, okay, I'd love to. And, I know Diane. So it went from, oh man, this is really bothering me, and I feel so bad because I feel like it's disrespectful to forget the name of the youth ensemble of Barbara Phillips. It's so the Carissa Royster was in there, Adriana Ray was in there. Yep. So many. Anyway,
if anybody's tuning in and write that in the comments, please.
Please, and it'll come in a second. But so that, I think I shared that with them, and I taught it to Mad Rhythms in 2005. Okay, let me go back from the beginning. 2005, Mad Rhythms Canada did it for the first time. Later in 2005, I shared it with y'all. We did it at the Chicago, annual Mad Rhythms concert. Yeah, and 2007 is when we went to China. And then 2010, I think, is when I put it on RPM. There it is. RPM. That's the name. RPM. Shout out. San Antonio. And then we performed it back in Chicago, because that's when the Chicago Human Rhythm Project was doing like countries. And I directed the show about Canada, and so RPM performed on behalf of my choreography, Love Me or Leave Me, and that was in
2011.
That was 2011, because while I was on that gig is when I got the call to join Stomp. I remember being about to do showtime, and they're like, "Great, can you come?" It was like Friday, and they were like, "Can you come? When are you back in New York?" I'm like, Monday. They're like, "Kate, so can you come to rehearsal Monday?" I was like, Wow. That's why I remember 2011 was when I started Join Stomp, and it was during that time. So, I just jumped ahead to that. But then so I was in Stomp, And I remember being on a tour bus and Diane called me. She's like, can you call me when you have some time? And I was on the tour bus and we were talking about tour life and all this stuff. And then she's like, yeah, so I'm directing the school at the Pillow, and, I'm putting a roster of folks together. And this is the second time that she did it, and she's just like, I really want these kids to learn Love Me or Leave Me. Would you do me a favor and come and teach this at the Pillow? I'm like, do you a favor and teach this? Are you kidding? I'm like, of course. So I got some weeks off of Stomp and took the train up to Massachusetts, Beckett, and and taught Love Me or Leave Me at the Pillow. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
I think I performed at the Pillow once with Barbara Duffy and Company, but now here I am, a faculty member at the school. And in that year was Luke Hickey was there. Oh my gosh, rest in peace, Antonio was there.
Hatcher, rest in peace. Crazy.
Yeah. And there was like, it was a really special moment. So that to me was like when I felt it got ordained, because like Lady Di, Diane Walker, asked me to pass this on, and then cut to, like, to your point, you and I end up on a gig together in 2018 in Germany, and we're like, shoot, do you remember those bars? Let's put this together. And we performed it,
I slightly almost forgot that we did that not too long ago.
Right. And before that was because we had just done it in 2017, again back in Chicago. So it keeps going. I performed it here in Calgary with a student that had learned it here. I was like, do you still have those bars? We need some extra stage time. And I performed it last year. So just so you all know, I finally finished recording everything, and it's about to be put on my online platform soon, so everybody can learn it. I'm about to put the record out, y'all, so you can all learn it at your own time.
Nice. That's super fresh. Yeah, because there are still people who are like, yo, where can I? When can I? And I just put in the chat on YouTube right now, on our Instagram at Shuffle Life, SHUFFLE, life with 3 I's. LIIIFE. On Instagram, we just posted it as like some promotion, for this. So the version that Lisa mentioned that we did as like a reunion thing in 2017, that's on there. Me, Lisa, and Trey doing it. And it's interesting because it's just a part of what happens. It's like if you're, singer, rapper, MC of a certain kind, you might forget your lyrics every now and then. We were working through that.
Oh yeah.
In that footage, but it's still like.
It's lit.
It's lit at the same time, exactly.
Yeah. That was us though.
Right.
That was us.
Yeah. Even if we were doing great on stage, we'd be laughing, clowning, anything. But yeah, so it's stayed around for like, wait, you said you choreographed it?
I still just did it. I choreographed it and started working on it in 2004.
Yeah.
And now it's 2021, and the Dallas residency, they just did it in January this year.
So this piece is going to be going on two dubs.
It's crazy.
20 years.
Almost.
Yeah.
It's insane. And I'm, yeah. So I don't take it lightly, because I still feel like I'm too young to have like historical rep, but whatever it is, I'm grateful, and I will happily pass it on. And that's why I want to make it available, because it's a joy for me to share. And that's not all that there is to me. So that's why I'm like, let me just put this out so that I feel like I can give it, and I could still move on with other things I'm doing in my life, Yeah. So yeah. I'm grateful.
Yeah, that's what it is for us as tap dancers. Like if we were musicians in a way of like recording albums, if that was how our industry has been ran, not that people aren't doing that now, not that we aren't, but we would be celebrating 10 years, 20 years since our first albums,
Right.
So in our equivalent is like certain dances, like I have one from I feel like you've seen before In Walk Midnight, this monk joint that
Yes,
that's
of
like the
course.
closer for this show that I put together. That's not like giving away too big of a secret or something like that. But that's making 10 years this summer.
Crazy.
And I don't know, just that, like I have stuff from before then, but that piece, to make 10 years is just a trip to me. So, it's a blessing. And so before we get back to like, how you made it to Chicago,
Yeah.
um, is there anything class wise that you want to plug in particular? We'll get into the events of this month.
Sure. Yeah. I
First
mean, I
classes.
do. I. Everything is available on my website. If you go to lisalatouche.com, it's pretty easy, and there's this tab on there called classes, and it clicks you onto the online platform that I use to sell my virtual classes.
Mhm.
There are a couple on there, and I'm about to. I'm about to. It's almost done. Put out "Love Me or Leave Me" on there, but yeah, everything's on my site.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat for those who might be interested. I think that it's important, even though people, again, like I said a minute ago, might be tuning in at a different time, to know what's happening now for those who are tuned in. Because you also are doing a weekly Friday class
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not pre-recorded. That's like on Zoom, right?
yeah.
So
It's more like I call it, it's called Tap for the People. And yes, yesterday, just timeline wise, it's fun because it'd be fun to listen to this later in life. But yesterday, I had Allie Bradley up there, and as I was sharing with everyone, like, listen, I do it, yes, for everybody, but I have a blast. And
yeah.
I treat it like a virtual living room. And
Mm,
I have people from all walks of life, with some sort of connection or an interest to tap dance, on there. And some that can then really shuffle, some that are just getting their shoes on, some that don't shuffle at all, but like know me somehow. And we share stories and always trade a couple of bars. And
yeah.
it's great because I just like you're doing right now. I learned so much more about people on there, or as I like every week I have some sort of something I want to get into, so it makes me kind of research a little bit, and I'm always learning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
that,
tune in, folks. I've only gotten to check out one so far, but it was fresh, and yeah, check that out. It should be on her site, which is
yeah, same thing.
in
Yeah,
the thing. Yeah. So
thank
as
you.
we go to how you got to Chicago, I
Yeah,
first want to just like, for me too, if you happen to know, when did you move to Chicago and when did you
yes
leave?
I do. Oh
Yeah.
yes I do. I very specifically, you know why?
Mm,
Imagine Tap.
word.
That time. So the first time I started traveling to Chicago was really like 2004 when I came there. I met Brill before I'd ever been to Chicago, right?
Mm,
I learned Oye Como Va before I ever went to Chicago. I met you all in St. Louis. George Moleg Patterson III is the person who drove me, and I saw the Chicago skyline the first time. I just met you know what I mean? So 2004 is when I first started spending time. 2006 is, I always put it this way, June of 2006 is when I started paying rent.
mm,
And I subletted for I think like 8 weeks or something, a small room in Hyde Park. I was never home, and because I always was up in Grant Park, Millennium Park, to hang out at the theater and watch Imagine Tap. So 2006 is when Derek Grant, um, and Aaron Tolson, produced this whole, or the language I don't even want to get into, but anyway,
mm.
Derek Grant choreographed Imagine Tap, and that had a 3-week run in Chicago right when I moved there, and I remember just going almost every day, and that was so it was like it was a time, man. It was a time. And because both Brill and Trey and Jamani were in the show, you know what I mean? Like, and I had finally gotten my visa. Brill's the first person to sponsor me, and I had to go through this whole thing with the government just to try to apply for a visa. I didn't get denied, but I got we need more evidence. So it took some time before I actually was able to get there. So by the time all the paperwork said, okay, you can come and you can actually like stay here for a little bit, it was that time and they were busy. So who took care of me? Really? Reggio. That's when Reggio and I got really tight. You know, he had a whip. I mean, I tell the story all the time. I think I mentioned it to you before. Like, he helped me cash my first paycheck. We were laughing about that on the phone the other day because I still didn't have a bank account. I was getting my Social Security together. I didn't have I didn't know where I was really, and he drove me around, made sure I was okay.
Currency exchange one time.
Yeah, exactly. And him and George were tight. So it was me, George, and Reggio for like a couple of months during Imagine Tap, just making sure we're looking out for each other, making sure they're really looking out for me.
Right.
And then I moved into my spot on Taylor Street in, I think that was August or September of 2006. And then I stayed I stayed for 2 years. So I stayed until summer of 2008. And, the reason, like, there's a few reasons, and I can't wait to tell you about all that I did in Chicago while I was there, because it was insane. But, I was there for, I get there, there's Imagine Tap. Then, like, it was in the shed all the time, and the company ended up breaking apart in 2007. But yeah, 2007 is when we go to China, and then Just Listen is formed of, Trey Dumas, and you and I are shedding all the time. I'd love, your folks would drop you off at my spot, and I'd drive you around because I had my car, and you already know what time it was. And then it was like, a year after that was coming up on what I thought was my last year with my visa, because Brill had sponsored me. Yeah. The company split up. I was no longer working with Mad Rhythms. I was working with CHRP for a little bit and kind of just doing my own thing and really working with Just Listen. And I was like, well, if I only have one more year with a visa to work in the US, and I had that big feather in my cap already from New York, right? I was like, I got 1 year.
Right.
So I said, do it now or didn't. Because at the time, my gigs were like working with BAM and also working in the suburbs a little bit. I was subbing a lot for Jay Fagan, and him and his father were so kind to me, gave me a lot of work. And I was like, well, if I'm just going to be teaching and, not really like dancing as much with my family, then let me just go to New York at least for 1 year, just to, and that 1 year turned into 12, which is a whole other story. But that's why I left then. It was really because I thought I had a clock on how long I was going to be able to be in the US.
Right.
Real talk.
Crazy. So, okay, so it was just a couple years?
It was just 2 years that I paid rent, but I was there a lot since I was really there for 4 years. You know?
Yeah.
Because I was back and forth with Trey, obviously, and I was back and forth working with Brill, but I then like moved on my own into my own apartment come 2006 with proper paperwork.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Wow, crazy.
Yeah. But you all saw me so often throughout the year.
Right.
Before then. Mm-hmm.
So what inspired you to move to Chicago, or like what made you do that after starting Mad Rhythms Canada?
Oh man, thank you for asking me that. Those different memories are coming up.
Right.
Okay, so yes, Mad Rhythms Canada jumped off. Okay, and 2003 to 2005 was Mad Rhythms Canada, and that was me age 22 to 24, like super young, and ambitious, and I did it. And I remember like the second year it amplified. I rented a bigger theater. We had the Calgary Tap Summit. I know Brill still has a poster, but I remember he was like, if we do that in Canada, then let's do it in Chicago. So then I helped him figure out the framework of how to do a summit so I'm saying all this to say is like I quickly became a producer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was hyped. I brought Dr. Jenny Lagan because she was in Vancouver. That second year we brought George and Trey and Jenny and Brill and Germani, and I had 10 guests or something. All of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I'm doing a festival. And I cried every day because I was like, this is a lot. I thought I wasn't going to be able to pay everyone. You know the deal. You're just like, what did I get myself into? And I was 24 and maybe 23 or 24. And I was like, okay, you're about to, like, I'm a go hard or go home kind of girl. So I was like, you're about to like not really shuffle and make this poppin', or you're gonna take some time now and make sure you do what you want to do. And I decided to do that. And what happened was George had a connect in Milwaukee. Do you remember this? This is why I'm laughing about these memories, because he hit me up and Germani up, and the three of us were supposed to go do this like year-long gig in China.
What?
A whole other thing where we were supposed to start this whole program.
Wow.
Real talk, tap talks. George had something happen with his passport. So he's like, you're going to go before me. So I ended up going to China, and then I ended up being there by myself.
Wow, I remember this.
Right?
Buying extra cheap Family Guy DVDs. Like,
yes!
Now it's all coming back to me. Whoa.
Yes!
Crazy.
Yeah. And then it just was like, it ended up being like quite a bootleg gig. I remember talking to Robert the summer before I left, and he's just like, now you're going to China, honey. Like, are you sure this contract is straight? And da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, I'm going overseas. I like have a gig. I think this is going to be great. Honestly, they did take care of me. Everything was well. But of course, like, the program needed time to build. And there was the first like month I was teaching one class a week, and I was like, why am I here? And then it took no time for me to be like, wow, there's no way they're going to pay for other people to come and, all this stuff. But I did, like, low key. I like lived in like rural China for 3 months, outside of Hong Kong, in a place called Shenzhen at the time, was just building. And yeah, it was crazy. But that's what stopped me from Mad Rhythms Canada. And then, because I got a gig somewhere else. And then I knew that I was like, the plan was I bank, put it all towards my lawyers, and then move to Chicago. So I always knew I wanted to go to Chicago. I had told Brill, like, I want to dance. I want to be in the company for a second. I don't want to just be producing,
Right.
And honestly, I give him, it was a hot mess, It was like it was like the times were tricky, the times were complicated, but he gave me that chance. He said, sure, and he was my sponsor, and I will forever thank him for giving me that opportunity. Now, once I got there and then things folded, it was a heartbreak. That was the whole reason why I got there, was Mad Rhythms, and then the band broke up, like,
right.
So if I use that as like a so again, now I'm bringing Reggio back. Yeah. So here is, you were there, the company split. There's so much stuff that happened. It was so heartbreaking. And now I'm like, felt like I'm caught between Brill and Trey, and like, who am I loyal to, because
Right.
here's my sponsor, and then like, the
Yeah.
person I want to dance with the most, and like,
Yeah.
so once that happened, and I just felt like, I don't know how you felt, because again, it's like you were so much younger. I know I turned 25 by the time I actually moved to Chicago. And so, yeah, here I am like 25, finally like independent, renting a place on my own for the first time and all this stuff. And um, feeling so lost. Like I no longer can dance with my friends. And
Yeah.
Reggio would check up on me all the time, man. Like, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, why don't you come over here? And I don't know how he did it, but he was taking ballet classes at Joel Hall. And
Mm,
he's just like, you should come. He's like, I know you got dance background or whatever. And I was like, all right, sure. So I put on my ballet gear and I go with him one day. And I was like, where have I been? Because we were doing like plies to Chicago house music, you know? Doing Tandu, yes, honey, yes, honey. And I was like, where have I never knew ballet was this,
yeah. Joe
So
Hall.
then, and Joel Hall is such a
Shout out. Huge shout out.
huge shout out. And I think the first time I saw anything Joel Hall was during all those Dance Chicago shows. We did Dance Chicago all the time, and that's a great like all styles dance concert that happens in, does it still happen? Dance Chicago?
A little something, yeah, yeah, here and
Uh,
there, yeah.
but they did a whole suite on Nina Simone. I remember like they did I know they did Strange Fruit. They did. I just remember just like felt like I got like Black history told through dance through Joel Hall and his dancers, and I was like, where has this been? I had seen Alvin Ailey before, but I was like, this is something
Yeah, it's different.
very deep.
Yeah,
And so when Reggie was like, come through, I was like, all right, fine. And then I was like, this is all that. And Joel took me under his wing, man. And it was like low key. I was in ballet class for 2 hours every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is after the company split, after Mad Rhythms. You all were still in school and stuff, but I would go to 9:30 ballet, and at 11 o'clock took 2 hours with Joel.
wow.
And I did that stupid lemonade diet at the time. So I was
What
like,
got in your ear?
yes, it totally was. Me and J-Bo were doing the lemonade diet.
I remember.
And then at night, yeah, and then once a week at night, J-Bo and I would go and do sushi samba together,
Yeah.
But
Wow.
anyway, I remember Joel was like, come apprentice with the company. And I was like, what? And again, here was I didn't think, but Joel Hall gave me a 6 o'clock. Lisa Latouche, there was a couple of times, I kid you not, my leg got to 6 o'clock. It happened maybe twice, but it happened. And I was like, that man made it happen. And I was doing my triple pirouettes and chaîné turns and jazz walks out the door. And, I remember learning this pas de deux with him and understudying Tracy. Do you know Tracy? She's one of the veterans there.
Okay.
But I just remember being like, who is in this room doing this right now?
Crazy.
But then I remember doing a gig at Dance Chicago with y'all, and I would see some Joel Hall dancers, and this shook me. I remember one of them coming up to me and be like, yo, you tap? And I was like, wait a minute. What? Right. I was like, oh, hell no. People are in Right, but it was, right. I really was up in there, and I started taking singing lessons there. That's when I started going to all the jazz jams, because Jamani had just found the 2 a.m. Tuesday nights at the New Apartment Lounge under Vaughn Freeman.
Yep.
And so it was like ballet by day and then like nitty gritty bebop by night.
Right. So just pause for one moment because
Yeah.
you said the name enough where people should have caught it, but y'all should look up Joe Hall. Whether you're a tap dancer or otherwise, like just he's still making history right now with Hipley, his ballet hip hop fusion thing. I had to like look that up a moment ago to make sure that as I thought was him. And the story behind that is really kind of legendary. But yeah, check into his stuff because he's
Please.
obviously beastly from what Lisa's sharing. But yeah, so you had that dynamic of that during the day and then going up to and I just also should interject for one moment for those who don't know. So me and Lisa, I'm realizing we got tight quick because it was
Yeah.
before you even moved here that like we were staying connected. I remember you being in China and telling me about how that was going.
Yeah, I would
I
write
don't know if
these
it was
emails and
emails.
you would write
Okay,
me back. Yes. Yeah.
crazy. So that's like before we even like had like an in-person like steady kind of friendship. And
Yeah.
but there's an age difference with not just us, me and everyone in the crew. Like I was like the youngest for a long time, and I was like
Mhm.
the last of everyone to reach 18 and then 21. So I would have been in these spots more often than I was from time to
Mhm.
time, sneaking in, back doors or front doors, some kind of way. But
Yeah.
I was so jealous of all of this. So that's actually I'm excited to hear more of this than what I've heard before and then some because I was living vicariously through you and Jamani. And like I said, I got in sometimes, but I couldn't and was not supposed to be in a lot of these places from the jazz clubs to even sushi samba, gigs that I
Yeah.
could have had, but I couldn't really be there like
It
that.
was all age related. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was. And that was really the thing. Like I was like for lack of, you know, I felt like I was like single, sexy, and free. You know what I mean? I was like 25 on my own out of the crib. I wasn't living with no folks. I was in a whole other country. I was around black folk. I was around culture. I was like, woo, sign me up. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to answer to nobody. You know what I mean? And
If
and I
y'all saw
went
what
for
that
it.
picture Lisa posted yesterday, that's who she's talking about.
That was, yeah, that was Chicago hooked me up with that image. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I look back, I'm like, oh Lord. But but I was in my mid 20s and I didn't mean it to say it like that, but that was just like the vibe. I felt like I wanted to be everywhere. I was at that age, if I only slept 4 hours, I could still function. I
Yeah,
can't do that now. But
yeah,
at that time you just go, and I would nap at some point, and then like I wanted to be around everything. That's when Corey Wilkes was around, and he was family. Who oh my gosh, and he ended up in New York too. Chris McBride,
mhm.
Christopher McBride, the saxophone
That's
player. He was like, the new apartment. So what happened? So let me break this down. So I get there. If you want to talk about these stories that Nico couldn't come to, I
Mhm.
get there during Imagine Tap. So this is when like all New York is in Chicago. Like everybody was there.
Yeah.
Who was in that show? I mean, we can run that down. The Jason Samuel Smith, obviously Derek Grant, Dormisha, Ayadeli, Michelle Dorrance was in the ensemble. What the heck?
In
Jared
ensemble,
Grimes was in the in the
yeah,
ensemble.
Joe Wade,
Jamani, Joseph Wiggin, um, like Chloe was in there.
Jessica Chapuis.
Jessica Chapuis, Kelly Kalita, Jason Janis.
Yeah.
Everybody was around. So there was this epic concert. The Roots came through Chicago, and the cast went, and I'll never forget. And I still have that T-shirt somewhere. The first time I saw the Roots live, it was insane. And you reminded me. I forgot that I caught a drumstick.
Yeah.
I
And
totally
got his
forgot.
sign somehow, I feel like.
I think you're right. man. But this is the thing too, like, and so that happened, and then that was the time that Jimani got the gig in France with
Mm.
Joseph. So Jimani had just started, he like really crediting Jimani, looking at like, again, this MySpace existed then. I think that was it. But he found where some of these jazz hangs were happening, and the new apartment lounge. So I started to go to a couple of them with him, and then he was gone. So
Mm.
then it was really, that's why I credit Chris, because he just took care. He would call me, and some of these, that's what I was trying to get to, is like the new apartment lounge was in the south side, and the jam started at 2 a.m. and it was like, I don't want to be walking there by myself. Do you know what I mean? From my car. So Chris would like come and pick me up, or make sure that like he followed me with my car, and made sure that everybody always make sure I got from my car to the spot to my car. It was all love. I always felt like people looked out,
Yeah.
and there was such a love. I think it's just like anyone in the music or anyone in tap dance, really. Once you know that someone has that love, you just want to help nurture it.
Yeah.
So it was really, during, like, to really put it to, the audience, the new apartment lounge and Von Freeman, like, okay, how do I describe the setting? It's like there was slot machines in the room next door. There was like this, like, almost falling apart ceiling that was all mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
There was like saggy, like, blue balloons hanging from the ceiling, and like a brass ring around the bar, and the band was in the front by the window, and Vaughn would always sit in the back, and you would go to the back and always pay your respects. And he'd always shake your hand, and he'd rub his thumb in your palm. And he was this old cat. He used to play with Miles Davis and like anybody through, like, I have a lot of his own albums. And so I think I was there with Jimani at that time, and we went back to pay his respects, and he was just like, y'all sound good. And he's like, you guys remind me of my dear friend Baby Lawrence. And I remember like, what? And we were like, yo, what? Your friend? Right. And he went, what? You know about him? Right. Because he was just like, he said it straight. He was just like, man, I didn't know that anybody would ever know him, because he knew him, especially later when he struggled with his addictions. So he's like, I didn't think anybody was ever going to get to know this man. And he started breaking down like really how he held the street corners, and stopped traffic, and like nobody had ever seen anybody dance like that, and and then I shared with Vaughn that I had his album. He's like, he had an album? So I brought Von Freeman an album of his friend, and he cried. He didn't know that one. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Just like that.
Yeah. And like, real talk, I burnt him a copy of the digital CD that I had, and I was like, I'm giving this to you. I ripped a VHS tape of Jazz Hoofer, and I just wanted him to have this stuff since it's his friend. And he cried because he's like, he was so happy to know that the world knew who he was, So that was like 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in Chicago,
Starting at 2 a.m.
Starting. Yeah. You maybe got on at like 3, Mm-hmm. But I would stand on the side, and people would sing, the melodies. They would talk to me about the form, tell me like, okay, this might be a good time for you to go and take a solo. Okay, get off. And then homie on his way to the slots would be like, yeah, man, that's a work in progress right there. And I'm like, thank you, like, it was just Chicago, it was
that's Chicago. So dope that y'all got to like figure that out together, and then you were figuring that out for then, once I was of age, the musicians who like taught y'all and learned as well through y'all how to communicate with us. Then by the time I'm able to, pull through, they knew exactly how to say, what to say. Like, okay, if nobody tells them, they're going to think, coming from their world where they get to just dance the whole song, that they're about to do that right now. And maybe sometimes you can, but don't expect to just be dancing over the whole tune, you know?
What?
So,
Exactly.
yeah. And I remember taking, you know, very specific notes of all of what you all were sharing, because I knew that, like, as soon as my ID, you know, would allow me, I would be up in the places.
Yeah.
And I remember
Because
you.
that was like it was Vaughn's, because he was still alive then. New
Yeah.
Apartment Lounge, and there was Fred Anderson, who was still alive too, at the Velvet Lounge.
Yeah.
And the Velvet Lounge was Sundays, Vaughn's was Tuesdays, and then you go and catch homies gigs, and that's when Corey Wilkes was in town, and he was friends with everybody. So that's how I got to know Robert Glasper, because he would come through, and Corey knew everybody, and I had a whip. I was cute. Of course, they were like, "Sure, we'll ride with you." Like I'm just being an idiot right now, but in real talk, and it was all love. It was like really, they weren't blown up yet.
Yeah. Wow.
It was like, let me tell you.
Wow. Yeah.
Let me tell you perspective. Because I'm laughing at these memories. I remember going to Rock the Bells because Robert was playing for Q-Tip and got us a ticket, and going backstage. And this is like when In My Element came out. So I'm in love with the music, So I'm like, everyone knows who this band is, but you're going to a hip hop concert. Fife was still around, Tribe Called Quest came back together for that tour. Wow. I got to meet Fife. It was insane. Like on a quick, like, yo, what's up? A handshake. It was insane. And, but I'm going like, no one knew Robert. People were all about, these other
the hip hop
icons. I think Method Man was on that bill.
For sure. Yes.
Q-Tip was on that bill. Do you remember?
Just real quick, yes, because my homie Jam One from the hip hop crew, I come from Sour Apples, was taking photos. And,
wow.
The folks that could go from this hip hop crew, Sour Apples, I'm part of, they went. And then went. I had like it was like a huge deal that Rock the Bells and all these folks were coming.
Yes.
And I was trying to like get a fake ID and but I remember hearing all these different things from everyone, because he had like, the official promo passes, and he was like meeting folks and seeing things. So I got that perspective. And then you were telling me this stuff back then, and I was just like hot. But still like dope that y'all got those experiences, and yeah, it was a pretty legendary concert, and I forgot that you met Fife. And
I will never forget. I could put myself. I remember this arena because it was like on the way to like Joliet. It was like in the field.
Yeah.
It was far. I remember. It was like, where am I going?
Great.
Yeah, and that's when I went with Amanda. I don't want to spill all that tea, but yeah. I remember that. But
wow.
Yeah. And yeah, so I remember that story, and then again, just to kind of speak on just the casualness of things. So another reason why I kind of got to know Robert and like we started speaking is because his best friend, I don't know if they still are best friends, but was Bilal. I know they were roommates together in college, and Bilal dated Chloe.
Yeah.
So Robert was like texted Chloe, like, this girl, Lisa, I see her around. Is she cool? Whatever. And so like, just, making sure we were decent folks. So we were all hanging out together. So whenever he would come to town, he'd let me know. And he came to town with Jill Scott. This is when he was just like side manning with folks. So I got to see Jill Scott, right on Lakeshore on that. I'll never forget it. It was, I have some funny stories. Oh my God.
Hold on. Pass me your cup, baby. Let me pour something in your cup.
No, I can't. Remind me of me to tell you a story when we get off of this. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Right.
I know what it was. I don't think maybe he wasn't. No, he wasn't side manning for Jill. He was opening for Jill with Bilal, but Bilal was still. I just remember in the what is it, Chicago Reader? I
Mm-hmm.
remember picking them up and getting the reader, and then the buzzkill of they misspelt Bilal's name, and it was Balil.
I was about to say, how do you misspell that?
I
What?
know they. I remember and just being like, and we were just going around like, wow, people have no idea who these folks are. Of course, they're going to go see Jill Scott.
Mm.
But anyway, there was another hilarious story that happened that I can't say. Um, but
Right.
yeah, that was like me hanging in Chicago at like age 25, 26, going around. And so whoever came through, Maurice Brown would come through. He's from Chicago. So I would just start seeing anybody who's anybody would come through those jam sessions. Right.
Right.
And I would sit and listen. And it would mostly be folks to be like, Lisa, get up and shuffle a little bit. I'd be like, okay. But I always thought I'm not worthy. I just wanted to take in all these artists that were killing,
Mhm.
and like supreme shout out to Chicago though, because I mean, jazz musicians in the game now, like Marquise Hill,
Mhm.
what? But he was just a regular attendee.
Right.
Isaiah Spencer. Now you're talking about Isaiah ran the jam
Mhm.
for, on Sundays. He would definitely not let you sit on a tune. He would stop the tune if someone wasn't playing the changes right and be like, we don't know the changes, get off the band. And I remember get off the bandstand. I
Right.
remember so many times sitting there just like looking down as he's chewing somebody's butt out. And I'm like, recognized but it was deep, right? It's like, know this music if you're going to be up here, otherwise sit down and take notes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Facts.
You will get a
You
settle.
right, otherwise I will let you know. And he was unapologetic about it, and I learned a lot, so but yeah, Micaiah McCraven, shout out. Greg Ward, shout out. Junius, all of them were just regular folks, so I just got really lucky. And then at the same time, so here I am teaching at Paul Revere. That was my favorite teaching gig, real talk, teaching first and second graders.
Shout out Paul Revere. Shout out Miss
Paul
Coco.
Revere. Yeah, Miss Coco. Is she still around, yo? Miss Coco.
Yeah, I
She
don't
was
know,
she's
but
the
I feel like
best, man.
I was there after you were there, maybe. But
Okay.
maybe there was somebody in between us. But yeah, yeah, yeah. It was.
Yeah, I did that for 2 years. I did that for 2 years. It was the best. But there's this after school program, and you taught a 45-minute class. And a lot of times it was just like, okay, they got their tap shoes and they lined up, ball change, stamp, okay, bye. But it was so fun. I learned so much about how to connect with kids and how to pass on their own culture, man. And still to this day, that's what I want to do more. And, but the program was so ill there that like, they had capoeira, they had like vocals, they had
Magic at
like,
one time.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
like, yeah, it
The
wasn't.
B-boys were there, and like, yeah, Stick and Move, right? That was the name. So
Yeah.
a lot of, between Dance Chicago connecting all of the dance genres. That's when I first saw Chicago footwork before Donetta was ever involved.
Yeah.
Like we were always seeing the illest of Chicago
Hmm.
on the stage at all time. Like, you can definitely speak more to that because I was only there for a couple of years, really on that tip. But we got to see, and plus you all street performing at the Taste of Chicago, and all the b-boys and everybody. So I got to befriend a lot of dope artists.
And see them in multiple places because you
Yeah,
can see some of these folks if they were street performers or also at Sushi Samba. Some of the capoeira
exactly.
folk and the b boys would be up there,
Yeah.
um, and then teaching at Paul Revere. And wow, yeah, it's. I knew that we were going to touch on these things, but it's bringing back memories, for me of all of this and all of those times, and it was dope to see what somebody who was older and, could be more established in that way was able to do and meet and see within my own city. That's what was
Right.
crazy, is like to, just like I said, as the musicians were teaching you, they're learning. Like it was mutual learning and networking and all of that, the whole way through. So that's crazy because, yeah, I remember that some of this stuff I knew in the time, and some of this is like somewhat new to me,
Hmm.
somewhat.
Well, yeah, because this was like, I mean, all I don't know. I've just always, especially again, I gotta just like put it out there. I mean, I just left home. I just left from like producing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And now I'm like by myself in another city that's dope.
Mhm.
As a young woman discovering herself and culture that she loves. So
Yeah.
I was didn't want to miss a thing. I was just having the time of my life, and also going through crazy hardships, of course, but it was like
Yeah.
Chicago was so good to me. And even when I went to New York, I remember a lot like Inlight. Remember Inlight?
For sure.
Brandon Bro, um, Kelly. They would just crash at my crib in New York. Like Chicago was, I had family in
Yeah.
Chicago. So I'm still close to some of my roommates back then. Yeah, yeah. So what was the poet's name? Keisha. Is that her name? Yeah, Keisha.
Mm.
Not the author. But anyway, I just met like so many great artists. So I felt like once I got to New York and then I stayed in New York, I was like, I would have not really kind of, Chicago got me ready for New York. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And they also like, I never, there's still something uniquely Chicago about Chicago. I mean, I never circled up like that. I'd never like rehearsals and like working on these, like, for lack of better words, routines and these pieces and repertoire, like, going on stage and laughing and having a great time, not just being so serious. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It was like just the joy of the dance, in all its truest form. I really felt connected to with all of y'all, really. And like I felt like that was the seed for me. And
Yeah.
then I had that feather in my cap about New York. So, by the time I got to New York, I already knew Jason, Dormisha, Max Pollock, all these folks. So when I got there, again, there was synergy there. Okay.
Mm.
Oh, Roxanne was still there. She was working on a project. She knew I was there. So, okay, come through to this. Max is like, I'm working on some new Roomba tap stuff. Come here. Jason and ACGI happened in China.
Mm.
Remember? I was just not sleeping, and Trey and I were trying to get those Song for My Father bars
Wow.
on some like crusty floor backstage. And he's like,
Right.
well,
Right.
okay, if you guys got it, so might as well come on stage, because he literally meant anybody can get it. And if you're getting these bars and you got it, okay.
Right.
And then we had, you and I, that experience with the TV show
Mm.
in LA, so I was already connected to folks before I got to New York. So when I got there, I just was lucky. Right time, right place.
Yeah.
I had only $5 in my pocket, but like I was able to get in on some stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I mean, and I appreciate you sharing the difference, and not to like shit on New York in any way, but there are differences with every city,
Of
for better
course.
or worse,
Yeah.
pros and cons, and yeah, like I mean, I don't just speak for Chicago, but like it's dope that you got some development, further than what you got in Canada,
For
here,
sure. Yeah.
from dance to otherwise, like, and yeah, like again, I was able to learn from you and folks older than me, but especially like, again, I was not of age to participate in everything, but as you mentioned, before I was whipping, when we were in rehearsals with Just Listen after we left Mad Rhythms, my fam would drop me off at your spot, or I would take the
Yep.
train to your spot. And then, we'd be driving to rehearsal and back and forth. So, like, on
Yeah.
those car rides, you'd be telling me all this crazy ish, or you'd be like introducing me to an artist and be like, yeah, and I met this person the other night, like craziness. Um,
Yeah.
like the Rob G thing, learning who he was and falling in love with that album, and then being like, "What does FTB mean?" And you like,
Oh Lord.
yeah, yeah,
So many stories, man. It's so funny.
yeah, yeah. But that was good times. So I'm glad that we got to cover. I mean, there's still more to that. I mean, what was the hangs that you were telling me that like Corey Wilkson folks would hit you up like, "Yo, let's go to." Was that to jams or to something else?
Yeah, it was like, Corey had gigs all the time. And he'd be like, come through. And he'd always be like, bring your board. So we'd be everywhere. And then it's like, okay, we weren't done hanging. So we'd all go to some club. And of course, he was like a king there.
Right.
So we all got into these clubs for
Right.
free, and then so it was like house party all night long. And yeah, that, and then some of like Brave Monk and In Light, Brandon, I'd kick it with them, and they're like, we're going to this house club, and it was like, okay, t-shirt and jeans, and bring your water bottle and a towel, and we would just like rock, till like 4 a.m. What was another one? DJ Sean Alvarez.
Oh my.
Ills, yeah, Chicago DJ. He would have these different like Afro house parties, sometimes in a house, sometimes so I just meet like local folks. Just there'd always be a cypher at some point. I would like, I'm like love dancing, and then of course I'm gonna like shuffle a little bit no matter what I'm wearing, and just have fun,
Yeah.
So it was like these hangs were not like, when I went clubbing in Chicago, it's not like, oh, I'm going to ladies' night and I want, I was like, no, I'm going to like get down with folks. And it was just fun, man. I would come home sweaty all the time, and then I would end up at like Highland Park and Buffalo Grove teaching little white kids,
Right.
to pay my rent. And then, as a lot of times I didn't know where I was because I never really understood that a city could be segregated until I moved to Chicago. You know what I mean? Like I never really, you would do school shows. So it's like curtain goes up, all black kids. And then the next day, curtain goes up, all like Latinx kids. And, like curtain goes up, all white kids. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then, so I felt like, especially because growing up in Canada, there's diversity-ish, but you just, I didn't grow up in Toronto where there is that going on. I grew up in Calgary. I felt grateful for living in, Little Italy, former Little Italy, close to the university, all walks of life, where, you had the projects close by. So I had everything around me. That gave me sanity, that I could see everybody where I lived, because I'm going to the south side, I'm going to the west side, I'm going to the north suburbs, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know where I am. Chicago would make me feel like, is this really the same city? I don't understand.
That's good clarification, because like not like I'm lost on, I don't have like the right MapQuest or something like that, like
Right.
or GPS. Like no, it is like that in some places, and I never, until I heard that the word segregated, that like we're one of the most segregated cities in America.
Yeah.
I never looked at it that way. I was like, oh, that's dope. Like, in Cicero and Pilsen, like that's the Mexican neighborhood. And there's like Chinatown. Like I was like, I thought it was like something to be more proud of, that we have these areas that are distinctly this and that. And I think there still is, of course, some pride there. But once I started learning more about this city and what that segregation all means, and redlining and all of those, all the behind the scenes. And I was like, oh wow, and neighborhoods that started as this thing that turned to that thing, and
Yes,
craziness.
exactly.
And it is very interesting, being a teacher or an entertainer, and of course, still giving the same information but to different audiences, whether it's performing or teaching. Because performing, curtain goes up in this place, is that. Teaching, you go from talking, minor code switching just so that people
Yep.
could understand, and
Yep.
I'm still here, of course, living this life, and I love it. But it is an interesting thing where, especially where I'm living, is where I'm from, and it's very diverse here. But if I go just a few blocks in a few different in either direction, it's like a different situation. Just a few blocks. you know. Um, but yeah, so I want to because we could stay on Chicago for forever, but I don't plan to mention this, but it always just comes up as like, this is part one, probably.
I know.
Of course,
Yeah.
ideally, when I could like do this with people in person, that's gonna be dope. So there'll be probably another part two where we could, catch
For
up on
sure.
anything we missed or
Yeah.
otherwise. But I really want to talk about because we could talk about New York in a whole other episode, and
Yeah.
different folks
I feel
you've
like a
worked
lot of
with.
people know so much about my New York life. And I told you there were some people in New York that didn't even know I spent time in Chicago. I was like, what? Like, do you know how much Chicago shaped me as a human being? Like, so I'm so glad that we could have touched on all we just did, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But I really want, for those who know you and those who don't, for anything that folks might have missed, for you to talk on some of the things that you're doing now, because you mentioned, Love Me or Leave Me coming out, and your Friday classes, but you have an event, that you're
Yeah.
doing like this month, and so could you speak on that and anything else that you're currently working on?
I would love to. I'd love to share two things. So, yes, this event that we're talking about is called Hanging with the Jasmines at the end of the month. So, in my quests of New York, and there's a thick that the chapters are always like so thick, man. But there was a thick chapter on Stomp, and then there was a thick chapter working with Savion Glover, which then led me into a room. um, and the story of, talk about Love Me or Leave Me. I remember I auditioned for Savion in 2009. And I moved to to New York in 2008. I auditioned, I started working with Max I did some ACGI gigs. I'm gonna land this home, Nico. Trust me on this.
All the faith in you.
Okay. The Cotton Club. Dormisha had just started the Cotton Club's Sophisticated Ladies, and at first, the owner wanted only chocolate, so it was myself and three other Black women. So we were there at the beginning, and so I was loving life, and I got a visa extension. And fun fact, it was a family member of Cab Calloway's that sponsored me. Some crazy, I did some crazy stuff, but anyway, okay, so then it was like I had this thick chapter of Stomp. Michelle Dorrance left Stomp. I remember running into her at ATDF, American Tap Dance Foundation, where like everybody's always walking through there at some point, and she's just like, "Yo, I'm leaving the show. There's, I'm giving them a list of folks that I could recommend. Do you want to audition for this show?" Never once in my life thinking that was even on my radar. And like I'd seen it in Calgary, loved it, thought it was dope. Again, not like Then I was like, audition, sure. And then ended up like having so much fun and got the no. And then, but we'll keep you on file. went on with my life, did that show in Chicago and got that call, and then entered, actually, we do need you. Can you come on Monday? And was in there for 2 years. Allie Bradley and I got in the show at the same time. And after that, started working with Savion Glover. And what am I saying is in 2009, it was when I auditioned for him at first. And again, it was like, please come, but it didn't work out. But I used Love Me or Leave Me to audition. I used it improvisationally, like improvography style, you know? So that's what kind of got me in the building. And I remember him shouting me out. And it took until 2014 for it to finally manifest. And you were there. You were staying with me in Toronto on a gig. And when I got that call, I was like, Nico, Savion Glover just called. You were like, excuse me?
Right. I'm like, what? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I started working on steps. And then later that year, he just said, yeah, I have this gig that I'm doing, and it involves like casting, and I'm not producing it myself. And anyway, can I give them your email? I'd like to recommend you. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but of course. And then the next day I get this email saying, inviting you to a workshop of an unknown title with Savion Glover and George C. Wolfe. And I was like, what? What? Because that name those two names together hasn't been since Noise Funk. It was almost 20 years.
Right.
So, yeah. So then I remember walking into the first rehearsal, and George walks in. I didn't really even know what he looked like. And he came in and was just like, I don't know if you guys ever heard of this show called Shuffle Along. And full disclosure, I was like, no. And which is embarrassing because there's a chapter on it in Jazz Dance. Right. And then he's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So cut to, that was the beginning of Shuffle Along, which eventually, made it to Broadway. And so the original show came to be in 1921. So we're in 2021. It's 100 years. And in 2016 is when the show was remounted in George C. Wolfe's way, choreographed by Savion Glover in 2016. That's what I was just saying. So this year, I'm like, where's the party? Because it's 100 years. And what I learned historically, just being a woman dancing on that show, I'm like, I think people should know just a little bit more about this. I was like, I guess if there's no party, I got to host a party. So that's what I'm doing next week. I'm going to have, we were called as a female ensemble, the Jazz Jasmines, because they were, there was like a few different names for the different female chorus lines during the original Shuffle Along, because in the original Shuffle Along, there was like over 60 people on the stage. It was insane. Yeah, so I think there was like the Honeysuckles, I have the bill. Shoot, I can't talk about it without talking about it. This is the original playbill from 1921.
Wow.
Yeah. So they, like, this is George C. Wolfe for you. He put this, you would get this as well as our playbill when you came to watch the show. And in here, it talks a little bit, just to kind of give you a little fun fact for those that are able to watch. But those are some of the original photos. And these here are the Jazz Jasmines.
Yeah.
But there was, there's a few pages in here, man. It's insane. But there's a character named Uncle Tom, it's so crazy. This is like the Jazz Jasmines, the Happy Honeysuckles, the Syncopated Sunflowers, the Majestic Magnolias. It's insane. So, but in the show that we were in, all the girls at some point were called the Jazz Jasmines. So we wanted to uplift like a lot of women that came through that show that a lot of people don't know. Adelaide Hall, who people know through Creole Love Call and the singer. And she kind of is, I don't know how much people know about her, but her whole career started from Shuffle Along. And, she went and did a few more Broadway shows co-starring with Bojangles. So, she was shuffling. Florence Mills, who is like, it's a tragedy she was never recorded, but she was bigger than anybody who'd ever been documented, even in today's time, as to how amazing she was. Her debut was replacing a star in Shuffle Along, and she was so killing that she got a standing ovation 17 times.
Damn.
Like, put that into perspective. She stopped the show 17 times the first time. No one had seen her before, you know. Right. But she came from the Lafayette Theater and did a lot of shows again with Bojangles, and you know, Josephine Baker was discovered through Shuffle Along. Paul Robeson, talk about Paul. We performed in the Paul Robeson Theater of Chicago. He started in the chorus of Shuffle Along. Like, it's insane. So I'm like, no one's talking about this 100 years later? Well, shoot, I don't know. It's just Zoom, but I'll do something.
Yeah. You just remind me, it's at Lisa Latouche, your Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So for folks who are checking on YouTube, I just put it in there, but that's at LisaLatouche.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Check out Lisa's Instagram, and please, I don't mean to like jump in the middle of this, but please check out this event. I'm saying check out her Instagram though, because you've been posting, you know, some of this information already as teasers, and like there's a lot to take in, you know, that folks should take in. So it's dope that you're doing this to big up all these people and make those connections. You know, Josephine Baker, you know, to work with the folks who were a part of this original production is ill.
Yeah, and then like honestly, you gotta hear the stories that Allie has from Mabel Lee, who was part of the revival choreographed by Henry Latang, starring Pearl Bailey in 1952. That tragically closed after 3 shows. No one got paid a dime.
What?
Yeah. So there is so much history about what didn't happen and what did happen around that show, and it was beyond historic, you know, that just never got the shine, including us. I mean, we got lucky. We're now in the library. We did not get a cast recording. It's like I cried and cried and cried and cried. Because we had Audra McDonald and Billy Porter and Brian Stokes Mitchell. Like, we had the star-studded Black ensemble of 2016. And we didn't get a cast album. And there's a whole backstory about that can make me cry right now. Because it was like some ugly stuff. And, you know, we were the year of Hamilton. So, you know?
Right.
So we got what? 12, correct me if I'm wrong, we got 12 Tony nominations, and we didn't get one because we were the same year as Hamilton. That's like never happened, you know. You get that many nominations, you don't get one. So we shut down after 100 shows for a million other reasons. But there's been something about that show. It's so powerful and it's so historic, and it constantly has been undermined. So it's just like a shout out to George C. Wolfe, because it was like a passion project of him to get this together, and to see him and Savion work together was like, it was amazing, yo. And to get that for 2 years, I was there at the very first rehearsal. Like, there's a lot of times in my life that I pinch myself, like, you know, talk about Rock the Bells, you know, but I pinch myself going like, how am I here right now though? Like, how? I don't, you know, I still think I'm like, I'm not belittling myself, but I'm like little girl from Calgary. Like, what, you know? And here I am. But that leads me to, if I may share, the second thing I wanted to share is that it helped me, because I'm back home in Calgary now. And I know I shared this with you, the full circle and the thing that is like, all that matters to me right now, you know, of course, 100 Years of Shuffle Along for sure. But I told you I was born in Edmonton, not people know. And there I found out about a set of twins named the Crump Twins that were also born in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And they were part their parents were part of this great migration north during 1910. This is way before Harlem Renaissance, but 1910 to 1912 there was a great migration specifically from Oklahoma, where there was like a few hundred folks that came from Oklahoma to Alberta, which is where I'm, and then this family birthed twins. So they were born and they had moved to Edmonton, were born, and taught that family was a showbiz family. So you're talking about African American culture and history landed right here. I never knew. And they ended up moving to Vancouver, and there was a huge scene in Vancouver called Hogan's Alley where Louis Armstrong came, heard about these twins, and and this is like in the 30s and 40s, if Louis Armstrong came and saw someone shuffle, they had to be bad in order for him, because that was the heyday. Yeah. So I can't even imagine who these dancers were, yo. And they did the whole thing. They played music, they wrote songs, they recorded albums, they had a whole act, and the world doesn't know who they are. And they were born in the same. So I'm like, okay, now I see why I'm back.
Yeah.
To really, and they worked with Sammy Davis, Jimi Hendrix. They grew up with Jimi Hendrix because Jimi Hendrix spent some of his childhood in Canada, and his grandmother founded one of the first black churches in Canada. And Jimi Hendrix played as a sideman in the Crump Twins band.
I was going to say, I've heard yes and no that Jimi Hendrix either shuffled or had some relationship to the dance.
Well, then that would have been,
that could have been,
that would have. I mean, I haven't heard that yet, but I'm like, well, obviously, if now I know, so I am in touch with the family. I did send. There's one that's still alive, and that's been a life's mission right now, is just to try to unearth more of this history and big them up. So that's what I'm up to, and I'm finding these unearthed Oscar Peterson albums up here. I'm messing with some stuff. I want to shout out my coach right now. I'm taking these weekly lessons with Tommy Campbell, who I met through Savion Glover, actually. Veteran jazz drummer who worked with Dizzy Gillespie and Sonny Rollins. And he's giving me lessons over Zoom weekly. And
Ew, super.
I don't know why it's you come home to Calgary to do all this, but hey, I'm so grateful just to be thinking about all these things right now,
Yeah, I mean, again, I have to keep mentioning because I know how, once you put something on the internet, it lasts forever, even if you delete it. But some people will be tuning in now and, a little bit after this, but some people might be tuning in later. And unless you somehow missed it, or this is 5,000 years from now, 2020 was a crazy year. And we're now in anniversary time of when it all went down, shut down. And so as we all were figuring out things, and you were figuring out things between living in New York and, going back home and all that, it's dope to see what folks have figured out, are still figuring out, but are also doing all of those things now, because, still people have to figure things out. We're still figuring out this and that, but it's dope where you're at and, what you're working on, and how, depending on where folks' heart is and their time and all of that, what they can contribute. Because a big question that I've always been asked, you as well, but we've been asked from our elders, is not just what can the dance do for you, but what can you do for the dance, and we have to make our own contributions, and we have to do our own thing. But at the same time, if you have the drive and the ability to do something like these two things that you're doing, it's necessary to document, so, and to share, because there are countless people who, even me, I don't know all of the shuffle along history,
I
and
don't
I'm
either, and
excited.
I still
Right.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the thing too. Just same thing for me doing all these footage nights. Excuse me, doing these podcasts. Like I'm learning every single podcast on the spot.
yeah,
There's questions I already know the answer to, and certain things that I'm like just doing the hosting thing to like
for
guide the
sure.
conversation. But a lot of things, every single podcast I've done, I'm learning something. Every footage event I've done, I've like found some research, found a rabbit hole, and then
Yeah,
presented something to folks. And in those sessions, once they happen, I'm learning from people who are participants, and
yeah.
so
That's what this is, man, and that's the way of learning. That's all I want to do now. Is like I want to learn that way because it's like it brings me back to St. Louis. Yeah, we learn bars in
right,
class, but like the hangs and then the stories and the footage in whoever's room till whatever time, and like that's the education. The 2 a.m. random lesson we got from Dr. Jimmy Slide is what, like, you know, just this is what it is. And like I feel like, I'm gonna just say this because you told me. I'm gonna just say this. This is what it is. This is what it is. You put a label on things. You
yeah,
put this in a curriculum. I get it. Guidelines. I get it. Accessing people that might not have access. I get it. But that's not what this is.
right,
Like this is really, the big word lately has been griot. Like,
mm,
what that really is. But this dance has been passed on. I got a lot in the studio, but it's been passed on through things like this, through story time, through putting the shoes on my own, like, closing the door and figuring it out on my talking to whoever you need to. And, so I think that's so dope. You're doing this podcast and you're doing what you're doing. It's the reason why I do my Friday joints right now, because I'm like, the hang is the classroom. And then like, you can't really put this all in a book, even though those are references. You know what I mean? Those are references.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the super interesting thing that I think folks should really consider is like, what do you monetize and what do you not? Because folks have to survive.
For
But
sure.
there
Yeah.
are some things like we can put it online, but still, y'all, you learn Love Me or Leave Me from the video. If Lisa ever teaches it in person, go and learn that in person. It's like all of these things. Just because if you learn something from anybody, since this past year where everything is now online, things have already all been online. Now it's like
Right.
completely like all there. But if and this isn't just like promo for me, I'm not charging for these footage nights, but once those happen in person,
Mm-hmm.
come and watch those clips again. Like I can't wait till all of this happens in person, that the things that we've been doing in the past year, which are some things we've done before. It's just in a different way, but it's
Right.
going to be exciting to do it, with people around, because you can't mass produce, the essence of the dance. Like it's for
Yes.
the people, but it's also certain parts of it are for people who like actually really want it.
Yeah.
We can't give everything to just everybody, because just like, when all the footage went on YouTube, then people are kind of like, oh, well, it's there. I'll get to it when I get to it. Like the more that we put out is like, this is a balancing act. Like with everything, we have to be careful of how we do that. But I should say, me doing these footage events kind of, in a way, came out of me going to one of your hangs, during
Oh,
during
fresh. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh man. Yeah.
during pandemic time, in the very early time of like exactly a year ago, March 2020 is March
Mm-hmm.
2021. But um there were different public events happening, and then private events, or just hangs, like a casual, like, this isn't, an event. We don't have to talk about a certain thing. Folks are just like, say, on this day, invite who wants to pull through. And I remember the first one I came to was not crazy long after my pops passed, and I remember I wanted to be involved with things, but I knew that that was still fresh. And I remember when I popped up, you and everyone was like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like don't worry about me. We ain't got to get into all that, like
Yeah.
thank you to those who acknowledged it, but like I'm just here to like experience and witness and chill and like, you know, but that first hang you were showing at some point folks should start playing some clips,
Yeah.
and you're like, Nico, what's your favorite clip? And I was like, my favorite clip. And it was just like, a sincere question, but it had me like, I don't know that I could lock down my favorite clip. I can mention one. I can mention a few, but it really made me think like I hadn't been watching. I've gone through so many different phases of watching footage, not watching footage, like
Yeah.
watching footage on purpose just for fun or to look for something as inspiration. And then the opposite, like I'm not going to look at anything old or new because I'm working on something and I don't want to be influenced for better or
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
Like I want to stay in my bag. But that slide clip I mentioned when he was doing when he was
Yardbird
in that
Suite.
bird documentary, yeah, doing Yardbird Suite.
Yeah.
And then that had me like, wait, that's on YouTube? Because you just looked it up and it was there.
Yeah. I didn't know either. Yeah.
And then that just like took me down the rabbit hole of like, yo, it's mad stuff on YouTube. I've been like, I've gone through those phases of like kind of rebelling to YouTube because it's all,
Yes.
you know,
I know.
just like, it's all there. But
I know. But if you don't have someone to guide you through sometimes too, like there's two things. There's your own curiosity, which is so important, and I think that's the initial ticket. If you're not curious, then why are you there? But then there's also like I love your footage hangs because there's always an elder in the room that can be like, now see, let me tell you about this. And you're like, oh snap, I didn't know. And it has you connect to it in a different way or learn something about, some footage you've seen 20 times, but then you're like, oh man, I didn't know all that was going on. Or,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not really here to plug, but I haven't even announced it yet, but we're doing our second ladies night theme the last day of this month. It's Wednesday the 31st. So most of these footage events have themes. But yeah, like I realized while everyone was like figuring out their thing to do in pandemic time, like I was like, you've seen people playing footage a little bit, but nobody's like doing that. So not let me like capitalize on this because again, I'm not charging people. I am accepting tips because it is mad work, putting it together. But I was like, okay, I've had such a close relationship to footage since these times.
You always have the best hard drives. You had the big bulky hard drives in your suitcase during those early 2000s.
It went from having these tapes to having, the same amount of thickness, but just a hard drive.
The big blue light.
Yeah. And I was just like, you know what? Like, people do need context. Exactly what you're just saying. We can play things like sometimes it's just played in a class. We fit it in before or after we dance just to get some history in. But there's only so much you could touch on because once you go there, like you want to go there. And but I was like, yeah, let's get some. Let me provide some context. Let me do some research myself. And I'm still not amazing at dates and names, but this will help me.
Like that goes back to the style of learning. You know what I mean? It's like we learn together. Yeah, there's a host.
Right.
But you learn together. That's what I mean. I am not preparing a big spreadsheet and a crazy slideshow and for the shuffle along thing. It's like I'm gonna host. I feel like I'm opening up my living room for us to all learn about it together and to remember things together and put things back. That's the fun.
Right.
I feel like, I don't know if you felt this, but I've lately felt so like unburdened because I'm like, yeah, man, I never thought I had it figured out. I don't want to pretend that I have it all figured it,
Right. Right.
figured out. So, but it's so fun to just like, okay, well, who's got this chapter or who, because you know what, like I heard a perspective the other day. There's first person and second person.
Mm,
First person is the person who was there in first person. So
mm,
yes, I can talk about those days that I was in the room working on the making of, and the times I was on stage, Shuffle Along 2016, but I'm going to be speaking in second person, like as a person that learned or read about the person who was there first,
right. Yeah,
about Shuffle Along in 1921. And if you weren't there, you're only getting an idea,
exactly. Yeah.
So it just has freed me to go like, yeah, I mean, I can talk about all these people that I love studying about, but I will never know them. I will never know what happened. So, hey, I got this tip and you heard that, dope. Let's look that up. Like, that's the fun. And that's what
Yeah.
we did,
Right. Yeah.
after 2 a.m. at Vaughn's, like, what is this tune? What's this album? What is this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's helpful that like it's not always just like, yeah, that is the scripture. Let's write it, but
yes, no,
somebody might pop in like actually and
right,
factually, but
yeah.
in and so
Ownership has got to go, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's
I
tricky
own
unless
I
you
own my clothes.
yeah, unless you like really know for sure, unless you're like an Aunt Di who really was there with Leon Collins.
Exactly. She was first person.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Mm.
But I appreciate the I don't know. I mean, we're all tap nerds is what not all. We're definitely not all. Cuz
Yeah.
some people just do the dance and that's cool. That's what they do.
Yeah, for
Um
sure.
but speaking for us two, we're definitely tap nerds, and I love the nerd out session and the figure it out. Like I can present as much as I want to or prepare, but when we're in those sessions, it takes me back to when we were in Evanston in Chicago, outside of
Yeah.
Chicago, or in St. Louis, and Aunt Di or Rob Reed, different folks are showing clips, and then there's history being shared and you could just sit back and learn, and then you could also sit back sometimes and see the elders like go back and forth with each other like actually I heard this and I heard that.
Yes. Or
And,
like, oh, there he go again.
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got a little bit of that, finding the businessmen of rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last footage hang I did that you ended up joining, and it was dope. I'm trying to add that in a little bit more here and there. Like again, like I said, I could be as prepared as possible, and I try to be as prepared as possible. But in that one, I didn't have time to do all the research, so I just put it out there, and folks are on the side watching, but also like looking things up and then figuring it out, and that was dope to figure out in the moment because it hasn't been as much of that. Because I've been coming so prepared, that mostly
Right.
what people add is something to add. It's not to fill in. Uh, you know, it is to
Yeah.
fill in for sure, but like, it was a different thing, and I'm looking forward to more of that. But this isn't really about me.
No,
I just wanted
we're
to,
all, yes, it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, this is
yeah,
all.
yeah. I just wanted to because I don't know if I've told you that like that first hang that I joined of yours is like what had me like, I haven't watched some clips in a minute. Let me look up some stuff. And then it was like, yeah, like this is like, of course I'm a dancer. The weirdest thing about it is like people like who don't know me who come to these things like, so Nico, you know so much about tap dancing. Have you ever danced yourself? And I'm like, let me stay
Yes.
humble, let me stay humble right now.
That was the same microphone check I had backstage of like, wow, from the Joel Hall dancers. They were like, wow,
Right.
you tap dance? I was like, what the?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I said, there's some people who, whether you're a tap dancer or otherwise, you just do the thing and that's it. And then there are other
Yeah.
folks where we engage in other things. Um, so that's just something that I've always been really connected to is the footage and just I don't know.
That's always been you though, Nico. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I
yeah.
mean, and not get twisted. Some of the illest chops and feet in the game. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean,
as well. I'm just said letting out your audience know, like, if you didn't know, like,
yeah,
please look this man up.
yeah. I mean, I
Who's hosting the Nico Rubio footage night?
oh, snap. Yeah. I mean, I keep a lot of my things, behind the scenes. I have so much that I don't release, but there is stuff out there. So, yeah, I'll take that. I'm at this point in my life, I'm still like not bigging myself up too often. But yeah, like if you don't know that I dance, if you don't know Lisa, if you don't know us for our dancing, yeah, we're talking right now, but we talk with our feet, and I talk best with my feet. So I get upside myself and say the wrong thing, vocally, but at least when I say the wrong thing vocally, or I hit you with a zigga digga da, if you know what that,
Yes,
you know,
yes, which is also in Love Me or Leave Me, thank you.
you, there
I
are
do that to you
other
all the
languages
time.
that I speak best that way because I could say
Well,
so much without getting in
I
trouble.
think, and I have to look back on the tape. I just want you to know that I think I said on my instructional video, it's like, you might want to ask Nico about this step.
Oh man, yeah,
I think so.
yeah, yeah. So if anybody really wants to know about the zigga digga da, I'll tell you because in another. Um, yeah, but yeah, so those things, getting back to those events. Oh yes, the yeah. I mean, I am a clown. The interesting thing is, so some different people know us for different things, and of course, like when we're teaching or we're at a thing, like we'll be professional. We could be ourselves, but like professional. Like the lady I'm only teaching at one studio right now, and the lady at the front desk the other day, she came in the room, and I was just being goofy, and she's like, "Oh, you're in one of those moods today," and I was like, "I am
Yes.
always in one of those." Like I've just been like
I've
speaking,
never had so much fun in the shed with anyone in my life. Like,
yeah.
come on.
Yeah, I mean, if I was not a tap dancer, there's a lot of things I could be, but like I don't know, I would maybe have gone into comedy, but really the OG is my pops. Rest in peace, pops. He's the guy I get all my humor from, or not all, but a good amount of that from. I'm still just
Wow.
trying to be like him. But what's interesting? This is off subject, and like I don't know. Maybe I'll share this with some folks. I'll do some more VHS footage, VHS vaults footage events. But I have a tape that I owe you from Chicago that it was one of yours. Like I don't know if it was on your camcorder or what, but there's so much like the tap slams where Jimani was doing "Love Me or Leave Me." That's in there.
Yes.
There's like
Oh, snap.
on Dai's class and like me, you,
Yes.
Donetta, Michelle, my sister, like doing, with
Yes.
like Leah and folks.
Mm-hmm.
There's just all this stuff, and then in between it, like it just showed me how tight we are, but especially we're in that time. Like in between all of this stuff is like just a quick moment of me like playing around in the background, or like you like, yo, show me this 5 count wing, and I'm like working on it, and it's just like all these interludes where I'm like, I'm a mess, just
We were all, yeah. Oh, wow.
yeah,
But that's that, like, curiosity, you know what I mean? Like, kids playing in a sandbox.
exactly,
For real. Like, give me that toy. Give me that toy. You
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean that also was right before I stopped being as open, even though I would still say I'm like open and not, but I remember that time just, for myself, where anybody asked me, show me this step, show me this thing you're working on. Or like if it's somebody else's thing or my thing, I was like, here, everyone take it all. And like that was right before I was like, I'm gonna hold on to some of this. You know. But
And then
yeah, I owe you.
slice everyone in the cutting contest.
Yeah, it was like right after that first.
Actually.
I owe you that clip. But
Oh wow, I would love to see that.
yeah,
Oh.
and so I just want to say this too, because I've said this before, but um, it's important for you to, enjoy what we do, because yes, we need to handle business and we need to do all of this and that. And I can admit that sometimes I'm a little too goofy, or like, a little too relaxed in the rehearsal space or whatever. But that stuff is important. That makes it to stage. Like when we were in Mad Rhythms, we, speaking for me and Donetta and Lee and Star, like we were all kind of young. And then when we separated and Trey started Just Listen, like I was going into my senior year of high school, and then I was going into like being 18 after that. And so our rehearsals like were like kind of that vibe that like Mad Rhythms was always fun, and we got things done for sure, but like we were acting a fool the whole time. But then Just Listen was like a more grown up version of that, and between me, Lisa here, Trey, and Jessica Chapuis, like we would be in stitches every rehearsal. And it wasn't just me cracking jokes, of course. Like,
oh my God.
Trey, you, Jess, like all of us were like just riffing off of each other, and it would be like, I think my abs were probably doing the best off of some of those rehearsals, at the time. But that stuff is so important, because like that made its way to the stage when we performed. Even if we weren't like joking, we just had a rapport that I think is really important, and I'd like to highlight. Depending on what you're doing, if you're doing an ensemble or a chorus line and everyone needs to have their leg in the same direction, that's one thing. Yeah. But kind of like the vibe that we come from and a lot of what we do, it helps to just like, have that collective individuality, where we're a collective, but we're all ourselves and bring something to the table, and that rapport is something that we bring to the table too. So
yeah, you can't from this you can't miss it. It's just so fun, and there's nothing like dancing with your friends,
Exactly.
Like I feel like Danny and I always had that here in Canada, when but it's like Mad Rhythms is just like, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring the hang to the stage, yo. It's so fun.
So fun. So in wrapping up where this conversation started, check out Lisa's site, check out her Instagram. It's all in the comment section. And thank you to those who jumped in on subscribing. We were like just shy of 100 subscribers before this right now. So now we're up to 101. So just quick shameless plug before we get into our last section. I just put in the chat as well. We have a link to different ways you could support us. You could support us for free by just subscribing to our YouTube channel, throwing some likes on some of these things. We're trying to get towards monetization. But also in the link that I just shared, we have merch. We have merchandise. We have mugs. We have T-shirts. And Lisa is sporting one of our Chicago Shuffle shirts. So yeah, there's some more to come. There's definitely some more to come, some things I've been working on. So please support us if you can. So much of what I've been doing is free to the public, whether it's these podcasts or the footage events. I accept tips there, but we're not doing a lot that we're charging people for. So we're trying to work towards monetization so that at least I can cover myself and different folks through things. So yeah, please support us where you can, and check out Lisa and her events. We have one more portion of the show, which is how we end with everyone. This is the Tap Nerd section, where I ask some sizzling questions.
Without myself. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just I sometimes give a disclaimer before each question, but I'll just say at the top of it, these are some hard to answer questions that would be hard
Okay.
for me as
Thank you for this.
for anyone. Yes. And just know folks that today is March 20th, 2021, but these answers for Lisa, just like anybody, could change tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. So
Facts.
it's just all right now. But
Okay.
yes, please sip some water, prepare yourself mentally,
I know. I'm like,
physically,
oh,
emotionally.
I really forgot. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So the first question is, who are your top five favorite tap dancers who are with us now? 3 to 5.
Okay, okay. I mean, I can't not say Aunt Di. So Diane Walker. Um, oh man, I mean, I Savion Glover. I just my favorite dancers forever. Oh, that's so. This is hard because it's like, oh, I can't say one, not the other. Like,
Right.
I don't know who to say first, and I don't want to disrespect anybody first. It's not about that, but like Dormisha and Ayadeli.
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, yeah. How many is that? Oh
That's
man, this is
4.
Nico.
I know. If
I
you go
mean,
over 5,
no,
like,
you,
it's again, it's me, is loose, it's open.
yeah, no, this is great because still alive and on some like honestly, it's like it's real. Like on some like grab a tissue. I don't care, but
Mm,
like I know he's family, but honestly, he's one of my favorite dancers. My brother, Danny Nielsen,
for
my
sure.
favorite dancers. Like um I'm going to be thinking later tonight, like, oh, how did I not even like, because there's, a thousand between like you, Jamani, Star, Nico. I mean, Nico, Lee,
Mm,
everybody in Mad Rhythms. It was like, no, I can't tell anyone what that was like to be in the cypher with y'all.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I always felt that there's no other cypher I would rather be in.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, let me leave that alone. Trey, come
Right.
on. Like, people, I don't think people really understand. Like, I definitely feel like he's had one of the biggest influences on my dancing, period, the end. Like, he's one of my favorite dancers as well, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to put Trey in any boxes, but sometimes certain dancers become like a Jay Dilla or a Quincy Jones, where like they influence countless people, but they don't get the notoriety that other people get for different reasons. I mean, if we keep it real, a lot of times the entertainment industry period is a popularity contest. It's not about just your talent or just your contributions. It's like, and especially these days, but I won't get into all
No,
that.
no, I know, no, I know, I know, I know.
So
I'm like,
but yeah, no, it's dope, big.
I would like, can I pitch to like, can you have a footage night about Trey?
Oh man, I mean, yes, I just, for anyone who hasn't heard me say this before, I really want to do modern day tap dancers. I mean, like, not
Right,
modern tap dancers, not
right.
modern, like people of
Dancers
the
of our
past.
time. Yeah.
But just like you said, how do I say? Do I say Dormisha and Io, or Io and Dormisha? It's the
Right.
same thing for the footage nights. Like the first few I did, folks are like, "You didn't do this. You didn't." I'm like, "Yo, there is no
I
way
know.
I can
I
get to
know.
all of it right away, so
Yeah.
that it's like politically correct."
Yeah.
So I think when we did the last shuffles, that was one of the first times I did like some modern day footage, and I was
Right.
like, "Don't be tripping if I play Lee before Star."
Right. Right.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll, but yeah, Trey, like we could spend a day on Trey for sure. And if you
Yeah.
all don't know who we're talking about, Martin Trey Dumas III, who helped Brill create Mad Rhythms, and then started Just Listen. He's on the T-shirt that Lisa's rocking. So yeah, you should definitely check into him and all the folks that she mentioned if you're not familiar. But yeah, those are all solid. So sometimes I flip the order of these, but the next question is, who are your favorite 3 to 5 that come to mind right now? Tap dancers who are no longer with us.
Yeah, like Baby Lawrence, Jimmy Slide, Bunny Briggs.
Mm.
Um, and then like Lois Bright. What? um, I just wish there was like more women. Edith Baby Edwards, Hortense Allen.
Alan. Yep.
Yeah, actually, I got a poster of her here. Uh, I mean, like, and then I can't say them without saying Jenny Lagan. Um, yeah, and I can tell you about like, I'm gonna add a subcategory of like dancers who are there's no footage of, like
Mm.
Alice Whitman, Florence Mills,
Yeah.
Ada Overton. Yeah, like
You know what?
there's so much that is left to like imagine. Like, could you imagine the dancing? Like Groundhog. Like, could you imagine the dancing based on how they were described? It's like, what?
Yeah, for real.
Mm-hmm.
And even folks that we have like one clip of, like Juanita Pitts.
Right. Yeah.
I would
or
love
Slow Kid, Ulysses Slow Kid Thompson. I think there's only like a silent footage of him, and that was Florence Mills' husband. Fun fact,
Wow.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Slide's teacher, I believe, in a way.
Whoa.
I believe.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely talk to Danny's definitely hyping up on Slow Kid. Yeah, y'all check into him. But yeah, I mean, I should have made like a Women's History Month version of these questions. So you kind of named some of them.
I mean, those are, I didn't even think women's history. I just like those folks.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, like the women, it would be so fresh if there was more clips. There are some clips, you have to search for them. There's things I've found in this past year I never knew existed before now. But I highly suggest y'all check out plenty of good women dancers.
On YouTube now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube, the whole thing. And Hortense Allen talks about how I'm going to misquote if I say any number, but how many pieces she did in a show and how many shows she did a night. Like the chorus girls, like don't sleep on the chorus girls. Like just because they're not the highlighter, they're not the soloist, like they are coming out between almost to every number in multiple shows. Like, yo, like I feel like it had to be like at least 50, 60 numbers a night.
Yeah. I remember that part. I can't remember the exact number either. Yeah. I remember seeing Mabel Lee talk about that too, about they would do 6 shows a day, 7 days a week at the Apollo, and then in between those shows they had to learn the new routines for the next week's show. Like,
yeah.
And on Broadway, we worried about 8 shows a week. Like, get out of here. Like,
right.
We will never know, like, just the work that folks really put in, men and women,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. Well, since we both have some background of the next question, what are your favorite tap shoes at the moment?
Okay.
Not of all
right now, the ones that I can't not wear, and I wear them to the ground, are the GS ones. Shout out to Matt. I have a pair that I got from him off of his shelf in his factory that are getting so crusty, but I love them. Yeah.
And that's the flat version, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if I put on heels, it's Laducas. Yeah. Which I never wore Laducas until Shuffle Along. And then I was like, man, these are really comfortable.
Wow.
Yeah. Capezio, if you get it from the basement in Japan, or if you have Matt build them up here in the U.S.,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Those are good. What is one musical artist that you can mention that you feel like you've danced to the most?
Oh, straight up, Ahmad Jamal.
Mm,
Ahmad
that's good.
Jamal. If that's like, yeah, I feel like I've thought about this recently. Like, if I was only had three artists or three CDs,
Mm,
I said CDs
mm,
that I could
yeah.
listen to, it'd be like Ahmad Jamal, The Awakening or Awakenings.
Mm,
Um, his version of Wave on there is forever my favorite. And oh crap, because then I'm gonna have to mention a few others. But
no, you,
Thelonious
you
Monk
go.
for sure. The Monk for sure. I'm stuck on his where is it? I've had these CD covers around here, but I'm stuck on one of his albums that he performed in Town Hall with a big band. And then
Mm,
Majamal, Monk, Oscar Peterson. Shout out to this killing album right now that I finally got hip to from my music teacher who used to hang with Oscar. So I'm like, what? And got the information from Oscar himself that his favorite ever recording that they ever did was in Europe, in Germany. And the album is called Tracks. And it's him
mm,
solo piano, and it's ridiculous. Um, and so I could listen to Oscar, any album of his, all day, any day. And then Art Blakey, you know, the
mm,
You Get To album, I can listen to all day, every day.
yeah.
Um, the album Caravan. Um, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Those
yeah.
are those are like I can just. That's how you fall in love with jazz when you know you can listen to a tune over and over and over again and hear more things. You know,
Right.
I'm still hearing new stuff. You
Yeah,
know,
for sure, for sure. Yeah, it hit me recently listening to something I have choreography, doing the choreography, and somehow I dropped out for a second because I was noticing something I somehow didn't notice before. Like it's so crazy. It's like
yeah,
movies.
it is. It's insane. Yeah, yeah.
So this next one will be a two-parter.
Okay.
Um, who is somebody you would love to work with if you could? A musician who is no longer with us, and then someone who is
Oh man.
musician, vocalist, vibrational artist. Other than the new one upstairs,
Yeah.
it sounds like.
I know. I know. I'm like hearing him. Oh, oh man. Well, I feel like because I'm just so stuck in him right now, and I'm like, you know, learning learning about. I mean, I wish I could work with Oscar Peterson for sure. You know, um, any of those guys I just mentioned, like that would be insane. Um, and then you said one who is still alive and with us right now.
Mhm.
You know, randomly, it's just like, yo, what would that be like to work with Kendrick Lamar? You
Mhm. Yeah,
know,
it would be like that.
exactly. He already knows. He already knows.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many, but I'm also like, yeah, I would love to make music with these folks. Like I always, it's interesting. I remember seeing, was it at the Grammys? I'm sorry I brought that up, but um, no, I can't remember what year it was, but Kendrick Lamar did Radioactive. Do you remember that?
Yeah, with Imagine Dragons, I think.
Yeah. And at one point, like they splashed paint everywhere. And I remember watching that going like, I literally can see a whole symphony of tap dancers rocking this out in a way that people have not seen this before.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I think there's still so much about tap dance that people just have no idea we can go there with it. You know,
Right.
I think people have a very limited scope in the like commercial, whatever word that is. I still don't really like that word, but like the popular most liked videos, I'm like, you still don't even know where we could go with this though, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for even our closest friends, I get people who like will send me, we all get that when somebody sends you something that's tap or even remotely close to tap because you're a tap dancer. But some things where they're like, wow, I didn't know you could. And it's like, yeah, how have you known me
Mm-hmm.
this long and not known this? But, you know,
Right.
um, but that's another uh, tap talk.
Yeah, it is. No, but
All
I,
of,
I really am more interested now, like, so I'm taking all these music classes. It's like, you know, the instrument of tap dance is one thing, but I'm like, you know, compositional approach though.
yeah.
Now it's like I am having a hard time, like, I can't really choreograph to a tune. I'm like, we gotta just write a tune, you know?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many
so,
limitations also from like
mm-hmm.
copyrights and like you know you do something that's not necessarily yours legally and it's going to limit you in ways. But other than that factor, yeah, like we you know there's still so much work to be done.
Yeah,
But again, you know those are other conversations for sure.
you're right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
uh,
know. I'm about to make this like the longest tap thing ever. I'm so sorry.
right, right. No, no, no. It's all good. I
I
also
can wrap this up. I promise.
no, 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 no. Also realizing halfway in, I forgot to even ask you like what's your time like? We just like
I
went
mean,
in.
I have like a couple of minutes because
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got to.
right. So
Yeah.
we have just very few questions left. Where is your favorite place to dance,
Oh
or
man,
that you have
lately I
danced?
love that. Okay, so my favorite place. Sorry, I interrupted the end of the question.
No, no, no. Like it could either be now or a place that you have danced. It could be teaching, to perform, to choreograph, to shed, whatever.
Well, I can just say this that like I'm so blessed right now. I've never been able to dance in my own home, and
Mm.
right now I am like it's like I've had a whole new love in a deeper way with this dance, and I'm loving dancing at home right now. And I have, you know, I feel like the masters. I hate that word. The ancestors. I really do. I want to kill that word. I have the ancestors around me, and I'm like, it's just. I can even put my baby to bed, and I come downstairs, and you know, I'm
Yeah,
so happy in my home dancing here right now. So that's like my knee jerk question answer,
yeah.
really.
No, that's a good one. I mean, from our contact, it seems like you've been vibing in it, and as someone who also like can dance in the crib in a way like never before, it's a major blessing because not everyone can
Holy.
do that. So to just be able to like get up and dance any time of the day or night, is a major blessing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I will also say, because this is coming to me for real, is like the Hoofers Club School for Tap, you know, where
Mm,
Savion Glover is housed. There was one corner of that building that I would go and practice.
I can only
Uh,
imagine. Yeah, no, that's real. That's super real. I can imagine the floor is like,
oh
imp-
my God. And there's just something like special. It's not that I like, listen, I don't, you know, I'm just saying like it's like the acoustics in that room at that particular and the kind of wood and where it was like I'm just it just was nice.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
really nice.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's dope. That's good. So
Mm-hmm.
just two more questions.
Yeah.
Uh, is there anything an elder tap dancer shared with you that comes to mind that has stuck with you?
Oh wow. Um, I've still Jimmy slide and put an E on it. You know, improv. Oh yeah, put an E on that.
Mm,
Um, So you can always improve. You really can always improve. And that's something about that time with him when we worked on that like riff in the what was it, like 2 bars,
Yep.
just sat with it. I was like, oh, you know, um, Savion would say there's more sounds than steps. That really stuck with me.
Mm.
And he really reminded me, he was the first person to say this, but reminded me that the journey is more rewarding than the result, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then randomly, I share this a lot, that Brenda Buffalino said, don't dance unless you have to.
Mm.
That's deep. Like, I don't know. What I heard from that was like, yeah, I feel like I have to dance. Like, I have to. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, woo, I got to put my shoes on. Like, I have to,
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't go as far as I did, as far as we are, you know what I mean? Like, this is water. This is food. This is life. This is my way to pray. It's my way to meditate. It's my way to feel good about myself. It's my way to process things. It's like, and I make a living off of this. What? So yeah, I'm like, and it's funny because Ada Overton wrote this huge essay. I have it here with me, actually. She wrote 1905. It's called "The Colored Men and Women on the Stage," and I'm paraphrasing, but she kind of said the same thing. If you want to dance and be famous, please, we don't need you.
Right.
If you want to dance and do good work and uplift your race,
yeah,
then we really need you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she also said, like, why are we studying Shakespeare? We got to do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
What if we practice what we do, as whoever we are as people? Like, don't worry about all that.
Yeah.
Love what you do and where you come from and what you represent, that it's so funny that like these words from 1905 that I just reread about 2 months ago has just been like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's worthwhile to go back and check on some things that we might have missed along the way.
Right.
So our final question.
Yes, last question. Yeah.
Yes. How would you like for people to remember you? What would you like for them to remember about you, as a person, as a dancer, all of these things?
Yeah, that like, Lovebug, you can come. You can come here. That honestly, like on top of all of this is like being a mom. Like I'm so blessed to be a human being, and like a tap dancer is not all that I am.
Yeah.
It's how I can communicate a lot of times. And Mom, you can bring him. Sorry, y'all. This is real life. You can bring him. But anyway, that there's just like, I just feel very blessed to have. I'm about to be 40 this year. I still feel so young, and that like I got the privilege to be around everybody I've been around and continue to be, and I have the privilege of being like documented. Do you know what I mean? So I just like want everyone to know that I'm just grateful, and we'll never really know the truth of anything, and all I know is that like if I didn't stay curious and so inspired, then I wouldn't be in these rooms and Zooms. Do you know what I mean? So okay. Yes. yeah, I think that there's, I don't know, humanity and dance. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I don't want to be remembered just as a dancer. Like obviously, like I'm a mom, I'm a human being. I care about the earth. I care about my friends and etc. And I just like there's so much that I'm curious about. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah,
know. No,
yeah,
like no one will ever know you. No one will ever know me. You know,
right,
and you know, if I get written about, I'm grateful. But I feel like whenever it's my time to leave this earth, every day I've walked, I've been really grateful and feel really blessed for what I've been able to be a part of and represent and experience. You know?
right. Yeah, facts. Yeah, yeah. No, that's love. I mean, it's a blessing to do what we do, but like you said, we are human beings first and foremost, and
Mm-hmm.
it's important to highlight that too, for us, for ourselves, and for other people. It might not be good for business to remind people that we're human, but we are human. you know,
I mean, it's all beautiful and it's also all a mess,
yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah,
It's okay.
yeah.
You
Like
know?
Mos Def called it, and Talib named his album after the term a beautiful struggle. Life is a beautiful,
Yeah. Hmm.
and we are beautiful struggles ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
But I so love and appreciate you in the first place, but especially for coming on and joining us here today. And for those who tuned in, thank you all for jumping on this live. Please check
Thanks.
out the events that Lisa has to come, and there will be more to come from the two of us individually and collectively. So stay
That's right.
tuned, folks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is just a blip on the pathway. I'm so grateful to you,
Yeah. Like,
Nico. And I love you, man. You know that, but I'm just letting you know again.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate it. All the love back. And I can't wait till I can see you in person.
I know.
This is
Ditto.
dope, but 3D will be fresh. So, yeah, folks, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you all next time on the Real Talk Tap Talks. Peace out.
Yeah.